Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
The Return of Joyboy by TheIntrovertRin. A story in which Luffy is the child of sea. The secrets of Luffy are unveiled slowly, which gives heart attack to people. Member list. Garrick Russell, Warlord. Black Money Young Lion, Warlord. KSG PL4YZ, Warlord. King Nemo, Warlord. Zach Travis, Warlord. Adios.
Chapter 32. Are you ready? The Going Merry was sailing through the vast, dark, murky waters of the Grand Line, approaching its destination at a steady pace. All the crew, except the captain of the ship, were laying on the deck, groaning and moaning as their bodies screamed bloody murder to them. The Straw Hat crew had just gone through their normal hockey exercise. The only thing that was new was Luffy personally training them, leaving them unable to even move a single muscle on their own. "Do you guys need more time to rest?" Luffy asked his friends with a pout on his innocent face. "I'm getting bored." Almost everyone flinched at that. After all, a bored Luffy is always a dangerous Luffy. "IIC can't even move." Usopp whimpered, regretting his choice of voicing his opinion as his body throbbed in pain the next moment. I wanted to play," Luffy huffed, turning away from his long-nosed friend and sensing a new presence among them. It wasn't hostile at all but curious. "Who's there?" Luffy whispered silently under his breath with a smile on his face as he skipped to the figurehead like an excited child wanting to unravel what new thing he is given. The gurgling of the ocean water excited Luffy as within a few moments, a sea creature, completely new to Luffy, poked its head out. "Sugoi!" Luffy gasped instantly out of excitement the moment the sea cat started rising up, only to look at the young god with eyes filled with curiosity and respect. Luffy waved excitedly at the sea cat, wanting to play with him and forget about his boredom. The sea cat in response bowed his head earnestly towards his young king. I wanna play, Luffy whooped before jumping towards the sea cat with a giddy smile over his face. "Luffy! You moron!" Zoro instantly shouted as he caught onto his idiotic captain's collar. "Don't act so childish, idiot!" Zoro chided as he threw the young god gently on the middle of the deck. "Zoro," Luffy whined as he sat up on his butt, "I wanted to play." "And with whom?" Zoro grumbled as he looked back to see what had Luffy entertained, but he found nothing. "Luffy, you can't swim properly, so don't go jumping in the waters," Sanji scolded, leaving his sentence unfinished. He didn't want to inform Luffy that he or Zoro might be too bummed up to rescue him if he fell, cause Sanji knew the reality deep within his heart. Neither he nor Zoro could ever stop themselves from diving right after the idiot. "That sucks," Luffy whined as he crossed his hands behind his head to lean over them. How about showing me some mercy next time so I can play with you later?" Usopp asked, holding his chest area in pain. It seemed like a good time to try to make a deal for less pain for Usopp right now. "Don't wanna." Luffy instantly shot down Usopp's idea. "It's better to bleed while training than to bleed during the battlefield. His father used to say." Luffy uttered, his words carried by the wind itself to the being who he referred to. "You okay there, Luffy?" Sanji questioned as he felt Luffy's mood shift for a moment there. There was something akin to longing and sadness in Luffy's face, but he wasn't certain as everything got hidden by the Straw Hat. "Yep. All fine," Luffy grinned widely, removing all traces of his earlier thoughts. It was strange though. Usually he wouldn't like to recall about his father, but some memories were just there, making themselves known to him. How many more days will it take to reach Arabasta?" Usopp asked, turning to Nami. He really wanted to land as soon as possible. At least he wouldn't have to go through the hellish trainings then. Just a day more." Nami stuttered out. Her insides were screaming in pain. "Who are we up against?" Chopper asked innocently as he was picked up Luffy to be situated on his lap. Chopper was the only one against whom Luffy went easy, considering he was the ship's doctor and the youngest in the crew. "Baroque Works," Vivi replied, as she clenched his eyes shut in pain. "They are a criminal organization who are planning to overthrow my kingdom." How exactly does this Baroque works again?" Usopp inquired as he tried make himself more comfortable on the wooden deck. "And what's with the Mr. and Miss business?" It's quite simple really. Vivi started as she tried to lean her head on the wall behind her and began to explain the workings of the Baroque Works. The Straw Hats intently heard as Vivi started speaking, even if Zoro pretended to be asleep or Luffy looked at the sky or the ocean seemingly in his own world. They both still paid as much as attention they could to Vivi's words. At the top, as they all knew, stood the leader, Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, who goes by the codename Mr. Zero. Below him, there are 12 couple of people and a couple of animal paired together and referred to as Mr. and Miss. They are paired in terms of their strength, starting from Mr. 1 to Mr. 5 and their partners, who all have a devil fruit power. Each of them command the billions, who are unnamed agents supervised by them. Mr. 6 to Mr. 12 and their partners command the millions, who are also unnamed agents. So, you mean to tell us that there are altogether 200 billions? And 1800 millions? Usopp yelled in complete panic, finishing Nami's inference. Right. Vivi nodded with a serious and grim look. But haven't you dealt with 4 pairs already? Chopper asked as he felt scared at the number of people who could attack them any moment when they reach Arabasta. That means that we have already taken down more than 200 of them, Sanji asserted as he lighted a cigarette for himself. Yeah, but we still have 1800 to go. Usopp gulped with fear, and not to forget about Crocodile. All I gotta do is kick Croc's ass, right? Luffy asked enthusiastically as he punched the air while getting up. You didn't understand a thing, did ya? Zoro grumbled as he turned towards his excited captain, only for the young god to giggle. Anyways, assuming that taking over Arabasta is Baroque Works' final objective, then those ones you call officer agents should all. Nami started as she looked at Vivi for answers. Yes. Vivi spoke, looking at a distant place with a scowl on her pretty face. They should be gathering in one place. In the vast stretches of the Cerulean Ocean, where the waves met the sandy shores of the island and the horizon kissed the sky and the ocean in its endless warm embrace, a pirate ship docked on the bustling shores of Nanohana in the island of Arabasta. Don't go wandering off on your own, Ace. Deuce warned the black-haired captain, who was already an inch away from running away in the crowd, carrying a backpack. That bastard is here. I need to find him. Ace spoke determinedly with his fists balled. He couldn't wait to drag the S of the earth out and kill him for harming his friend, whom he doesn't even know has survived or not. He wasn't going to call them or pick up their calls. He doesn't want to hear what they have to say to him. For all we know that he could have skipped islands once again. So, I need to find him or any information about that motherfucker. You aren't alone in this, Captain, Skull instantly chided Ace with a frown. Ace's one of the most irksome and bad habits was to take every burden on himself, but Skull wasn't going to let him do everything all alone. We are with you here. We promise to find everything about that bastard, then show him pain like no other. Thanks, dude. Ace saluted with 2 of fingers before flipping off the deck and landing on the shore. He wasn't going to put down the offer even if at the same time he wanted to do it all alone. Still, that guy's mine for crying out all aloud. If anyone finds him, call me immediately, got it? Ace asked with a mischievous glint in his eyes. He couldn't help but imagine all the different kinds of torture he wants to do on Teach for everything he had done. Roger, Captain, the Spades chorused. Wallace and Aggie 68 were guiding their ship to a more remote location to hide it away froze while Mahal agreed to stay on the ship as its protector and the others dispersed in groups for other towns to gather information about Blackbeard. I'll leave you behind if you are slow, Ace warned Deuce, who was his babysitter for the day. Ace didn't like being monitored by his crew, who were concerned for him. He didn't like worrying them, that was the only reason that he was letting someone accompany him. I know, Ace, Deuce spoke, weaving through the crowd behind Ace. The only mission he was looking forward for that evening was to find Sabo, who had told him to meet at Nanohana. He has to find excuses for Ace to stay in the port town before Sabo could find him. Ace queried about the man, no, about the bastard he wanted to so dearly find right now to every shopkeepers and local he could see, yet he came empty-handed by the time the sun bid farewell and the moon made its presence known. We need to move to the next town. Ace grimaced. He was thirsty from wandering all around the town without a hint of the bastard. He wondered if Teach had been here to begin with. He shook his head before he could doubt Saber's information network. It rivaled the Whitebeard's 13th division after all. Ace hissed at his thoughts mentally. There still might be some people who we haven't asked. Deuce pressured. He couldn't let Ace leave Nanohana not until Sabo comes. The blonde teen has to have a way to help Ace the way none of the Spades can. He has to lift up Ace's mood. The Spades had done all they could and are still doing, not giving up on their captain, and yet Ace felt as if he was shutting himself slowly but surely. Ace sighed. It was the second time Deuce was asking him to reconsider wandering to the next town. He wasn't getting what Deuce wanted, but he didn't have time. Yes, there was a chance that they have not yet asked everyone, considering he was getting diverted with the new cuisines sometimes and walking astray from their paths, but still, is it worth considering the people whom they haven't questioned when at least more than half of the locals have denied seeing the bloody traitor here? The sky was darkening at a steadfast rate. The locals were heading inside to shelter themselves from cold and to rest their bodies after a day's hard work. Little to no people could be found on the street anymore, so Ace decided to stop for the day and settled in a nearby bar. It at least had a few customers, meaning the drinks weren't bad. Most of them looked shady for sure, but Ace had enough of talking to strangers for the day. Tomorrow, we are leaving for the next town, Deuce. Ace spoke in an authoritative voice, leaving no place for Deuce to speak. He then looked for the bartender, who was busy cleaning some glasses for the next customers. "Old man, get me a drink." "The strongest one." Ace placed a bag of coins on the counter, then slipped his sea stone ring onto his fingers. He wanted to be drunk and wasted after the day's turmoil. Hopefully his other friends has found some information on Teach. His thoughts drowned out the other sounds in the bar and his observation hockey, which would have let him know someone new had entered. TCH, Ace. Seriously, drinking? The strongest one? Without me, brother? A heartbroken, dramatic familiar voice spoke, entering the bar. The man, dressed in a blue cloak with a blue top hat shielding his face, plopped beside Ace, taking a seat. "Sabo!" Ace exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine surprise and delight as he quickly side-hugged his brother. "What are you doing here?" "You know, the usual. Pissing off pirates and marines alike," Sabo stated while taking off his hat and looking at his brother. Taking every bit of his presence and letting it soak within him. It was a proof that his brother was well, even if his slightly bruised face still told him in another story. He then turned to face the man next to Ace. "Hello, Deuce, good to see ya too." "Same here, Chief," Deuce teasingly spoke with a smile and a sigh of relief, which he was holding. He was happy that he had finally completed his mission of reuniting the brothers. "I have some business to take care. Mind if you babysit the captain for me?" Deuce asked, taking the opportunity and dismissing the frown on Ace's face. "I'm not a baby. That's Luke," Ace retorted with a huff. "Yeah, sure, big brother." Sabo chuckled, drowning a glass of sake which he had ordered. Ace looked mostly fine from outside, but from inside he could already tell that Ace was struggling to keep himself together. "Tell me how you have been, since you haven't been calling me or picking up my calls." Ace so dearly wanted to dismiss the topic. His mind ran miles to find a perfect excuse to not make his blonde brother suspicious as he sipped on his whiskey. "Is it why you came all the way here to find me? I'm really happy to know that you care, but still I'm fine, Bo?" Ace insisted, but the look in Sabo's eyes clearly told he wasn't satisfied with his answer at all. "Fine. I'm not okay, but still okay enough," Ace asserted, not even knowing what he was trying to speak. "Ace." Sabo spoke softly, his voice carrying concern for the oldest. The whiskey was revealing Ace's true emotions. The blank look which settled on Ace's face told stories to Sabo which he wasn't sure would be pretty to hear at all. He wanted to help. "Mind joining me a bit for a walk?" If Sabo ever wants to bring out Ace out of his inner turmoil, then he knew he needed to bring the oldest teen to a place where he can calm down. And a bar filled with grimy and sweaty men was not one of the places to find solitude and peace. Ace nodded, trusting himself to his brother as Sabo led him outside of the bar carrying their drinks and a bottle to go with. The chill air hit Ace's bare chest in the absence of his devil fruit, making him shiver a bit, but at the same time made him relax and feel relieved. They walked silently for a few minutes, occasionally taking a swig of the bottles in their hands. The tranquility of the night was settling in as the sky appeared to be completely dark. The moon greeted them as the stars littered in the sky, twinkling to their brightest and fullest. "You okay there?" Sabo spoke softly as they finally reached near the shore of the town, which was vacant of any conscious life. He saw down on the sand and signaled Ace to sit down next to him. It was only them, relaxing on the sandy shores looking at the vast galaxy of stars glittering in the night sky just like the old times. The rhythmic lapping of the waves only added to the serenity of the place. Yes. Ace finally answered, feeling his worries leave his body a little but at the same his emotions flooding at his mind gate, waiting for him to let them flow free. It's just like the old times. Remember the times when you would sulk all by yourself and Luffy would insist to never leave your side, resulting in us having sneak out and watch the night sky? Sabo asked, looking at Ace whose eyes were already welling up with tears at the slight hint of Sabo knowing what's going on. Why yeah. Ace croaked, hiding his eyes with his hand. Even if Luffy isn't present here, you have me. Sabo spoke in a gentle voice, turning towards Ace. So, tell me, Ace, what's troubling you? Ace stayed silent, feeling his throat suddenly clog with untold emotions. It wasn't me, Bo. Ace choked out after a while. The blames from the Whitebeard resonated in his mind, making him want to curl on himself. He hated crying on these trivial matters. He hated himself for it. Why did he have to trust on them so much that it hurts? I didn't hurt Thatch. I know, I would never blame you. Sabo assured Ace gently, making the oldest teen hesitantly nod after a while. It hurts. Bo. Ace spoke, his voice heavy with emotions, sadness, regret and anger. They threatened me. They wished me dead. I saw in their eyes. Ace's lips trembled. It's not like I am not used to. But it has been so long. Sabo's eyes saddened at the reminder. Deuce had told him everything, which included each and every insult thrown at Ace. It hurt him to go through this. It pissed him off knowing that the Whitebeards could ever jump to conclusions that way. Even if they have acknowledged their mistakes and tried to contact Ace, the damage was done. Irreversible damage that would never their friendship be the same as before. But I trusted them, Bo. Ace finished, opening the lid of the whiskey bottle. Sabo let Ace take a chug out of it, seeing the glassy sheen and a lone tear slid from Ace's eyes. Let it all out. Sabo gently spoke, his own eyes filling with sadness at Ace's condition as Ace rambled on how he couldn't take it, how he had to look after Thatch first before chasing after Teach. Sabo held Ace in a hug the moment the tears started flowing down. Ace needed to let everything out before it consumed him. He listened through everything, gently rubbing circles on Ace's back as the drunk teen began slurring everything out. Ace, you aren't worthless. You aren't a monster. No one can judge if you should have been born or not. Sabo spoke holding Ace's hands. The moment Ace to know he's loved and cherished. You're an excellent brother. I and Luffy need you. Your crew and friends need you. So, don't ever let yourself ever believe that you aren't needed or wanted. Ace hiccuped as Sabo's own emotional voice made their place in his heart. This was what he needed to hear. He's so thankful that Sabo exists and is beside him. Don't even think about throwing your life away. Got it? Sabo tried to assert sternly, but all his voice was capable of producing was a sob. That crybaby would be a wreck without you. Heck, I would be lost without my other half, my twin. So, don't you dare Ace, don't you dare repeat what you did that night. Sabo cried, holding onto Ace, remembering how badly he let himself get beaten up some no-name people in an island after the entire ordeal. Ace held onto his twin brother and nodded shakily. The heavy weight of his sadness, the emptiness, the death threats and those voices vanishing one by one as the words of Sabo repeated in Ace's mind. What would Luffy do if he ever heard what had happened? Sabo questioned Ace, wiping his tears and willing them to stop flowing. That was the last nail for Ace and a warning for him to stop sulking. His heart almost stopped when he realized that even Luffy could have tried to call him, but due to the Whitebeards continuously calling him, he hadn't picked any calls. What if Luffy already knew from his mother? He doesn't, right? Ace questioned Sabo with wide fearful eyes, before another realization struck him hard. Wait, how do you know? The wind and climate seemed to have stabilized. Nami uttered, stopping in her tracks, and as a result got whacked by Vivi by mistake, making her yelp in pain. They were in the midst of training their hockey and luckily were not being trained by Luffy, who was playing with Kark for a while. Each of them was silently thankful to the duck for that. Yes, we must have entered Arabasta's climate, Vivi confirmed, as she took a look at the nearby ocean. She was amazed how Nami could read the climate and weather so well without removing her blindfolds. Vivi also noticed that Nami barely ever had to change their path. It's as if they were still in the East Blue Waters. Also, it was strange for her to not see the sacred sea cat yet, which resides on the coast, as she had always seen it whenever she had left or arrived in her homeland. Had she possibly missed it? And I guess a sight like that is another proof that we have reached Arabasta. Zoro pointed at the horizon as he stopped at his training. The horizon was covered with an armada of ships. So many ships. Where did they come from all of a sudden? Nami asked as she removed her blindfold. The sight which greeted her made her pale until her face looked as white as a paper. They all have Baroque Works mark on their sails. Vivi gasped as she looked through the binoculars which was nearby. Vivi was utterly confused when she noticed that the ships were pointedly coming towards them. She had thought that Crocodile was under the assumption that the Straw Hats were not an issue for him, considering that the Unluckies had somehow followed Luffy and agreed to not inform Crocodile about them. So, they are starting it, huh? Luffy asked as he hopped to his favorite place to analyze the situation more closely. It can't be. Vivi's eyes trembled at the sight and the binoculars almost slipped away from her hands. There are not only the billions but the millions as well before us. There are 1,800 of them, Nami and Usopp shrieked as Vivi's words got to them and the information which Vivi shared to them yesterday collided together. They're elite agents who are completely on another level from the regular bounty hunter you come across in Whiskey Peak. Vivi trembled slowly, her hands tightening on the railing of the ship to keep herself steady. Guys, hate to break it but we are surrounded from all sides, Sanji announced while chewing the butt of his cigarette aggressively, and true to his words, they were surrounded from all four sides by a fleet of ships led by the Baroque Works agents. Nami, how much time will they take to reach us? Luffy questioned Nami as he stood atop his favorite place. He was vibrating with excitement but knew something else needed to be done before fighting with the Baroque Works. 15 minutes, Captain, Nami reported, judging the wind, waves and weather and how fast the ships were approaching them. That's more than enough time we need, Luffy grinned brightly as he turned towards his crew. That was the time Zoro and Sanji arrived with bandages and markers and refreshments respectively. Who's hurt? Chopper asked innocently, checking everyone for any visible wound that wasn't a small bruise from training. It's our secret plan, Chopper. Zoro smirked as he drew an X on his wrist and tied a bandage above it. There is a chance that Okama guy would be among those ships. So, we can't recklessly take any actions. Zoro spoke, passing everyone bandages and marker. Look! Look! Luffy cheered, showing his arm where he crafted a crude straw hat skull, dismissing the serious atmosphere in an instant. Luffy, come here, Sanji sighed, pulling the teen by luring him with the refreshments. He had already given the ladies theirs, so he wasn't worried about them getting over. That's why, he focused on making a cross on the kid captain's wrist before covering it up. Can he really look that similar to us? I mean that guy with the copy fruit? He doesn't just look like you but is pretty much you. Too bad you missed him. Usopp spoke up, as he finished tying Chopper's and Kark's bandages on their wrists. Usopp really felt himself trembling as the time passed and the ships continued to surround them, but the childish way Luffy was acting, weirdly enough, was a bit assuring to him racing heart. Gawking at Okama ain't my thing. Sanji shivered a bit at the very thought of having to ever talk to an Okama or fight with him. What should I do? Chopper questioned as his eyes trembled a bit with fear at the sight of the number of ships surrounding them. Just do what you can. There's no need to do any more than that. If you come across an enemy that's too strong, then I'll be there to kick its ass away from you. Luffy finished Usopp's words with a big assuring grin. After all, he wasn't going to let any of his friends fight anyone they can't handle. Especially not Chopper, who was his cuddle buddy. I'll do my best. Chopper clenched his hooves in determination, no longer fearing about the people who were coming to attack them. Okay, maybe just a little fear was still there, but still, he was going to give his best. Boom. Boom. Splash. Splash. Aghhhhh. Usopp, Nami, Vivi, Chopper and Kark cried out in fear as a cannonball just splashed in the water, missing their ship by a hair. It's finally started, Luffy grinned manically, excitement visible in his chocolatey eyes which flickered to scarlet red once before settling down to the chocolatey ones. Wudu asked with a smirk as he unsheathed his katana, ready for a good fight. We kicked their asses, Luffy grinned, stuffing all the leftovers in his mouth. Desert King, Sir Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea and the president of the mysterious crime syndicate Baroque Works, operating under the code name Mr. 0 Feet, cackled evilly in the City of Dreams rain base in Arabasta, which served as the headquarters for the organization. The Straw Hat Pirate's ship has been sighted heading towards Nanohana. Robin, or rather, Miss All Sunday, spoke in an emotionless voice, studying Crocodile's every move carefully. Have the Baroque work agents surrounded them? Crocodile asked with a smug grin on his face as he already knew the answer, and it was confirmed when Nico Robin nodded her head. It is an overkill for the Straw Hats to face against 1,800 of Baroque work agents, Mr. Zero. Robin stated, narrowing her eyes at the warlord. She couldn't comprehend herself as she felt the slight twitch of annoyance at the man's actions. She personally would have left at least 200 agents in Arabasta to secure the island, but she wasn't going to speak her mind out. The Straw Hats? Crocodile cackled with venom laced in his voice. Even the princess of the kingdom had perished under the attack of the 3 Seas. Don't you know, Nico Robin, how the 3 Seas tend to mercilessly beat down marines and pirates alike to take their ship and treasure? Robin didn't answer. In the Grand Line, it was a common knowledge that the 3 Seas, one of the pirate groups who were feared besides the emperors and the warlords of the sea, were pretty much the most slippery and secretive trio to ever sail the seas, as they never had a permanent ship to sail with or eyewitnesses to tell a tale. Besides that one time a few years ago when the trio fought against the Whitebeard pirates and were all over the news for weeks, with people speculating over who won the fight as the result was unknown. I was thinking of getting assistance from the world government by telling them the plans of the 3 Seas. Crocodile started, regaining Robin's attention as she looked at the man with slightly wide eyes. But I can't. The Operation Utopia is too important for me to invite the government dogs to interfere with it when it's just in its last phases. Indeed. That would have been way too foolish. Robin asserted, taking a sigh of relief which she had held for a while. She couldn't even think of the government coming in Arabasta and finding her. After this all is over, the world will soon know that I, Desert King, Sir Crocodile, has eliminated the 3 Seas. Crocodile laughed as he ripped apart the 3 posters laying on his desk using his hook. He grinned at the recognition he would get, the fame he would receive, and the fear he would spread. It would help him make sure that no one ever dares to look down at him. Not even that sadistic pink flamingo of a man. Yes, Mr. Zero. Robin spoke. She wasn't certain if the 3 Seas were really there and the Straw Hats were dead, but she knew one thing, that if her hypothesis was correct, then they were alive and Straw Hat Luffy either pretended to be Syra or is Syra. Robin felt that the kid was not someone who would pretend to be someone, but the possibility of him being Syra were too small. So Robin was looking forward to see who would emerge victorious from the battle. Baroque Works or the Straw Hats. If Baroque Works emerges victorious, then it would mean that Straw Hat was a lair and had planted a trap in that island whose eternal pose he gave her. But if his ragtag group won, then there was a chance that someone in that group was either Syra or Straw Hat himself is. Robin really was interested to see the end of the battle. She had another questions as well. If Straw Hat Luffy is Syra, then who are Cole and Cyan? Someone on the crew, or were they elsewhere? Chapter 33. Quad of Mischief. The night draped in the melancholy of solitude, where only the stars and moon hesitated to twinkle and shine, giving their guiding light to the twin brothers, Ace and Sabo, who walked on the sandy pavement with the echoes of the faintest whispers of the wind and the occasional soothing chirps of the desert crickets surrounding them. The large bustling port of Nanohana looked void of any life at approximately 3 a.m. in the morning, in which Ace and Sabo finally decided to retreat to the small refuge of a motel in which Sabo had got a room for the night. The atmosphere inside the little motel room was strangely comforting for Ace, who had suddenly felt homesick and was still reeling from the shock of Sabo knowing what had conspired with him and the Whitebeards. Luffy was a problem too, if he came to know what had happened, but for now Ace prayed the sea goddess to have not said anything to his baby brother about him. He didn't want to see Luffy's baby face contort into that of anger and go after the Whitebeards. Sabo, reading Ace like a clear book even in the dark room, shook his head fondly while switching on the dim light from the single lamp in the room, which cast only 2 shadows, one his and the other Ace's. Those 2 are still not here. Sabo mused with a surprised voice. breaking Ace from his worried thoughts. That was when Ace noted that there was 3 small beds with blankets and a big carpet on the ground with 2 blankets spread on it. Who else is supposed to be here? Ace questioned out of curiosity of who was joining them for the night. He would have preferred to bring Sabo with him to the piece of spadil, but the blonde had told that he hadn't come alone. He should have asked that time, but he was completely panicking over who all knew about his situation. Before Ace could ask more questions or Sabo could clear Ace's doubts, there was a light soft knock on the door, making Ace stand stiff and prepare for any intruders, but the haki which flooded inside him from the 2 presents were familiar. No way. Ace muttered in surprise as Sabo got to the door to reveal a towering figure filling the doorway with a small figure perched on his shoulder. They were none other than Bartholomew Kuma, one of the main leaders in the Revolutionary Army, and Jewelry Bonnie, who was in her adult form. "Bonnie? Uncle Kuma?" Ace exclaimed in disbelief as a giddy feeling and nostalgia hit him hard. "Ace ni." Bonnie smiled a big grin as she jumped off her father's shoulder and turned into her real 10-year-old form, which the government knew. "Bonnie, I'm really glad to see you here. I take it that Dad has finally allowed you to accompany Uncle Kuma for missions?" Ace asked, ruffling the hair of the youngest lovingly. Bonnie was adopted into their little circle by Luffy, or rather Nika, when she was too small. "Yeah, I am already too big to join Daddy." Bonnie spoke with a giddy smile as she separated from her oldest brother. "Ace, are you okay?" Kuma opened his mouth after dropping the bag which he was carrying. It contained paperwork and some important information which he had gathered after meeting with several locals throughout the day with his daughter. It was the best day for him cause he had Bonnie by his side all the time, without worrying about her staying in Baltigo and getting caught in a ruckus. "Why yeah. I'm fine." Ace regretted stuttering when he looked at the soft face of Kuma contort into that of something akin to which he never thought would see again. Kuma looked just like when he was so stiff, his shoulders always contorting into tenseness and a mind filled with worries. Just like the time when Aunt Ginny was kidnapped or Bonnie was suffering. Ace looked at Sabo, asking silently if he had told the man what had happened, to which Sabo swiftly looked away, pretending to get ready for the night by removing his Arabastan costume. "Traitor," Ace mouthed to Sabo, before looking back to Kuma. "I am fine now." Ace spoke, fidgeting with his own vest. "I wasn't, but I'm okay. So, you don't to worry, all." Ace got enveloped in a hug by Kuma, stopping his incoherent words. His body felt tired after the day's ordeal, his eyes felt like dropping down, and his throat felt clogged once again. It was the second time at the same day when Ace was forced to realize that he had lots of people who care and love him. "Ace, I know this must be incredibly difficult for you to process that those you trusted have accused you falsely, but remember, that doesn't define you. Their words were merely their anger, which they let out on you that time." Kuma started softly as he patted Ace's back gently. He felt Ace shaking in his arms as he hid his face in him. "You don't need to dwell on them, cuz know this, you are amazing. You're the one of the best brothers I could have asked for Bonnie. You aren't a traitor, and they have realized that, Ace. It doesn't mean that you have to forgive them or talk to them. It's even okay if you don't want to forgive them. Just know that we are with you," Kuma finished softly. Ace's body racked with ugly sobs as he felt another small body hug him. He was really glad, not for the first time, to have so many people in his life who care for him and are there to support him in his life. "I am sorry to worry you." Ace wiped his eyes after he calmed down. He hadn't cried so much, at least after he knew that his biological father wasn't as evil as the government portrayed. "Ace ni. I promise to kick their butts when I see them. How can they accuse you of all people?" Bonnie frowned in anger, but Ace couldn't but chuckle seeing her cute face turn more cute just for him. "It's okay." Ace smiled, ruffling the little gremlin's hair, making her throw punches at him. Ace laughed, feeling light and sleepy at once. All that was needed was Luffy in the fray to complete their little quad group of mischief. "Bonnie, get to bed now, otherwise you won't be able to get up on time for Luffy." Sabo chimed in with a soft smile on his face. "What? Luffy is coming?" Ace and Bonnie shrieked at once, one with excitement and the other with anxiety and nervousness. The Going Merry danced with the waves which caressed the ship due to the cannons which were fired from the opposing enemy vessels. Shouts, yells and orders being barked could be heard as the armada of ships started approaching the Straw Hat crew, blocking their way to escape from all sides. The little captain of the Going Merry, Monkey D. Luffy, stood on the figurehead of the ship, his prized straw hat dangling from his neck in the air as he vibrated with excitement and nostalgia for the incoming fight. He couldn't help but remember the times when he fought with his brothers against fleets of ships of marines and pirates alike just for looting their rations and money and fun. His crew, on the other hand, felt a mixture of fear and determination coursing through their veins. They were tiny bit scared, but that wasn't enough for them to cower and hide. "I'm so sorry, it's all happening because of me," Vivi cried out, regretting to drag the good pirates in her problems. "How? It was me who challenged Croc, not you," Luffy spoke, his voice laced with confusion. "Luffy." Nami gritted her teeth. She couldn't believe the way their captain was behaving so childish in the face of the battle, and moreover had the audacity to challenge one of the warlords of the sea. What was next? Them fighting some emperor or challenging the world government? Do we even have a plan to escape from this mayhem? "Yep, it will be all okay," Luffy chimed in, jumping off the figurehead. Boom. Boom. "They're going to hit us," Chopper squeaked as he saw 8 cannonballs heading straight for the mast of Merry. "What are we gonna do?" "Surround them, men, don't let them escape. Mr. Zero wants them to be annihilated, and we do so." Loud orders were barked from the enemy ships, followed by the cheers of the crew who thought that they had an upper hand. "Ag! What the hell are we to do?" Usopp shrieked as cannonballs missed Merry by an inch, once morgue with life, the guns being aimed at them. The vicious yells of the enemies and the frightening hellhole they were stuck to were giving Usopp a heart attack. "We head straight," Luffy ordered as he jumped to the highest point of the ship, which was the top of the mast. Anchoring one of his feet to the mast, he blew air in another, inflating it and stretching the leg, before kicking the ships which were close to them. Gomo Gomo no Giganto Pinwheel. The attack single-handedly tore through a bunch of enemy ships, leading the water to pour inside and many of the agents to fall victim to the vicious, dark, murky waters which trashed them relentlessly. "What the hell? That puny brat is a devil fruit user," someone from the ship shouted, followed by another. "Someone patch up the bow." "That was amazing," Chopper gasped with wide eyes filled with admiration and awe, similar to Usopp's and Karu's. She. Luffy laughed as he uncoiled himself from the mast and hopped down to the sails, taking a front seat at the chaos which followed at the other enemy ships. "Guys, hate to break it, but more cannons have started to fire at us," Vivi stuttered, noticing with wide eyes as the cannonballs headed straight for them and the water to splash high in the air as they missed the Merry by luck or chance. The ship swayed dangerously, almost as if it would flip any moment due to the sheer velocity of the cannons which weren't hitting them but yet had a huge impact on them. Usopp, handle the cannon. Luffy finally took his job as a captain tad bit seriously. Luffy knew he was pretty bad at it, but he needed to be a leader for his crew and his friends. He felt the waves of fear mixed with awe coming from Usopp, Chopper and Karu, guilt from Vivi, and confusion and helplessness from Nami. A big grin erupted on his face when he felt Zoro and Sanji not even a bit scared or overwhelmed by the opposing enemies and their sheer number. Got it. Usopp ran through the stairs to bring out a cannon. He was scared, but the way Luffy was dealing with the problem and not taking anything seriously was weirdly leading him to believe that everything will be fine at the end. The best sharpshooter of the world, Usopp, is going to eliminate all the threats to the Merry, Usopp boasted, trying to make himself feel better as he positioned the cannon on the deck. Nami, wait for the opening, until then handle the helm, Luffy commanded, seeing Usopp come back with the cannon and shoot at a cannonball which was heading straight for them, leading it to be obliterated in the air itself. The blast filled their surroundings with smoke which could have been detrimental, but with just one swift of Luffy's wrist, a gust of wind cleared their view. The wind ruffled Luffy's hair softly as a big grin and a giddy laughter erupted from his throat. "Way to go, Usopp," Luffy cheered, forgetting his captain's duty altogether. "Bastards! How dare you attack our ship?" a dangerously sharp voice yelled, soon followed by a muscular man who climbed up on the Going Merry. "Aye, intruders!" Chopper and Usopp shrieked at once, seeing 2 more strong, muscular men with bandana tied on their heads or with a sharp mustache making them look more intimidating. "You, Miss Wednesday?" a sleek man wearing sunglasses and a bandana shouted, seeing Vivi present with the Straw Hat crew. "So it was true that you betrayed us." I did what I needed to, Mr. 10. Vivi steeled herself as the man hopped aboard with her trusty explosive baton weapon at her side. Don't you dare touch Vivi-chan, Sanji shouted with an angry look as he saw the man raise his gun and aim at Vivi. He was quick enough to kick the man on his shitty head and disarm him, leading him to fly back and hit the railings and fall down to the treacherous ocean. Thank you, Sanji. Vivi thanked as she peered towards the railing of the Going Merry to see more agents trying to swim towards the Merry while some retreating to their allied ship. There were even some who weren't able to even swim properly due to the angry churns of the waves. She felt very strange at what she was witnessing. The waves were throwing the agents hayway, making them either drown or run back to their own ships, while the Merry didn't even feel any fury of the ocean. No problem, Vivi Xuan. Sanji nodded with hearts in his eyes as he landed a fury of kicks on the intruders who tried to get on board and attack Vivi and Nami. He left Usopp, Chopper and Karoo to their own devices, seeing that they were holding their ground by themselves. Chopper had changed to his monster point, tackling down the intruders who called him monster or tried to attack him or Merry. Vivi readied her weapon and tackled some of the millions who came after her in fury of betraying them and just for thinking her as weak for being a girl. Zoro hit some on their face with the hilt of his sword, not deeming any of them worthy of his katana or to get him serious. Usopp used the cannon to destroy the cannonballs heading towards the ship while also protecting himself when any intruders went after him. He was scared at first, but seeing Chopper and Karoo not give in fight, gave him courage to fight. Meanwhile, Nami manned the ship to avoid getting hit by cannonballs even when she felt that ship tried to change directions on its own. They were lucky that Merry was helping them, otherwise their ship would have been doomed until now, due to the sheer amount of cannonballs being fired at them. Luffy, on the other hand, enjoyed the show his crew was giving him, supporting them and cheering for them from the top of the sails. Where he sat, he was itching to fight and was about to join in when he heard a conversation from the enemy ship. No way in hell! A shrill shout came from one of the enemy ships. Those impudent bastards! How can they retort when I am their executioner? That's the leader of this fleet, Luffy thought, narrowing his eyes at the man who looked too weak to do anything in the battlefield. Mr. 6. There is a huge problem. One of the subordinate of the Frontier agent, Mr. 6, came running to the man with a panicked face. The Sea Kings, they are attacking us. What? Sea Kings? Mr. 6 shouted out. He had not considered the impudent beasts of the sea in his battle against one single ship which Mr. 0 had assigned him as the ringleader of. There are Sea Kings. Vivi repeated what she heard from Mr. 6 of the Baroque Works. She instantly picked up the discarded binoculars to look at the enemy ships more closely and true to their words. Several ships were being attacked by the Sea Kings who were nudging at the pirate ship or trying to gobble up one or two for a snack. Hell, she even caught a look of the sacred cat of Arabasta, and even the sea cat looked angry and was trying to attack any ship in his vicinity. Sea Kings? Chopper shouted in fear as he got one look of them. Luffy? Sanji called out to Luffy with a sweat drop. It's your doing, isn't it? Sanji asked Luffy, leveling him with a glare. He could still remember how their first encounter with Luffy freaking communicating with the Sea Kings and then ordering them to pull their ship went. He so dearly wants to forget that whole incident where he couldn't be at the side of his dear Nami-chan to assure her, but for God's sake he couldn't. But I didn't ask for their help at all. Luffy whined, seeing his sea friends call out to him and beat the other pirates just for his sake. He could even feel Merry and his mother aid him in his battle. I appreciate your help. I mean it, everyone. But I had everything in control, Luffy whined internally. What the hell does it even mean? Vivi shrieked in fear and shock. First was the Baroque Works agents who surrounded them, then the intruders climbing aboard, and now the Sea Kings who could attack them any second. Don't get her wrong, she really wants to save her country and like the Straw Hat crew, but each and every mystery of their captain were giving her heart attacks. She even wondered if she would start getting white hairs the next. FY can talk to the Sea Kings. Zoro helpfully provided Vivi and Chopper, who were on the verge of a panic attack with how they were breathing. Karoo was completely out of the question as the duck laid unconscious on the deck from one side of the Sea Kings. Sanji, Nami and Usopp, who didn't know this new information, almost freaked out. The thought that Luffy wasn't their enemy was really a relief to them. I am not gonna let them take down the enemies all by themselves. Luffy pouted as he jumped from the sails of the ship to the deck. I'm gonna destroy more ships than you guys," Luffy hollered to his sea friends, who bowed their heads a little towards him before continuing their nudging and getting their tiny snacks. "Don't make it as a game, you idiot," Nami shrieked from where she stood outside of the room containing the helm. She had came out a while ago when Vivi had freaked out about Sea Kings, and true to Zoro's and Luffy's words, she could see the Sea Kings truly helping them. Vivi was completely dumbfounded at whatever was happening. She couldn't process anything anymore as Luffy slingshot himself with Zoro on tow to the enemy ships. It was only her luck that Sanji was present, fighting and flinging the intruders off the deck, that she could have the luxury to witness the fight for herself. 1, 2, 3. Vivi saw how the captain, who is actually a year older than her, completely demolished ships after ships as if he was just bored and got a better way to spend his time. It was a dance of an entity, whom she could either call a god or a devil, she was witnessing. She couldn't even comprehend anything as she just saw Luffy hop from one ship to another, leaving the ship wrecked up and their inhabitants to cry out in pain and fear. 11, 12, 15. The fact that the next ship's crew, at one point, even started begging for mercy and wanting to retreat despite their commander's orders to keep fighting, was really horrifying. Adding the Sea Kings in the fray looked like an overkill. They were not even bothering to stop Luffy or Zoro. Instead, they were finishing the crew which the duo had left in their carnage. Usopp's shots were even deadly despite the long-nosed teen's fears and cowardice. He was aiding Luffy and Zoro with his precise aim by hitting the mast or bow of the ships which the duo were leaving, leading them to either sink or their debris to hit the water. When Vivi had registered Zoro's words of Luffy being able to talk to the Sea Kings, she didn't want to believe, but seeing it for herself was something she was sure that she couldn't forget ever. How strong was Luffy? Did he hide his strength behind all his goofiness? Because one can never tell that the scrawny teen can even harm an insect only by seeing him? 20, 21, 25. Chaos. Inhumane. Otherworldly. Those were the only words which were flashing in Vivi's mind as she saw the captain of the Going Merry toy with the enemies as if they were nothing more than a plaything for him. She couldn't register the cannons erupting from both sides, echoing across the ocean like thunders raging in the sky in fury. All her eyes could catch were the ships sinking one by one and the unnatural waves crashing against the hulls of the enemy ships like a raging beast unlike their own, which seemed to be as calm as possible. 31, 32, 35. Vivi had seen Zoro fighting like a monster back in the Whiskey Peak, where he single-handedly made the bounty hunters eat dust despite being outnumbered. She admits that their foe right now more stronger than the one they were facing currently, but she couldn't even see Zoro or heck even Luffy break any sweat while fighting, the ever-present smirk on Zoro's face as he destroyed ships in the opposite directions of that of Luffy's, while Luffy's giddy laughter while tossing and playing with the enemy seemed to enthrall as well as frighten Vivi. 36, 37, 30 EIG, boom. The Merry jerked dangerously, flinging Vivi to the mast of the ship, only for Sanji to catch her in just the nick of the time. What happened? Vivi asked, slightly disoriented from her tuning out in the middle of the battle to observe Luffy and Zoro fighting and counting how many ships each one of them destroyed or sank. They got us. We have been hit, Sanji. We are doomed, it's over. Usopp's panicked shrieks gave Vivi an answer to her question. What? Vivi shouted with wide eyes and turned to look at the damaged part of the ship. She only had to look upwards to see the sails of the ship torn apart and the mast swaying dangerously, as if it was just one step away from falling over them. Luffy, Zoro, head back. We need to leave now. Mary can't take any more hit. Nami shouted out while massaging her head where she just got hit from the rudder when the ship jerked due to the cannonball hitting their ship. Coming, Luffy shouted as another ship started sinking. Holding onto the figurehead of the Merry after stretching his hand, Luffy caught onto a protesting Zoro who by himself had demolished 7 ships. Gomo Gomo no rocket. Zoro shouted as he was flung once again by Luffy towards another ship. Do you want to kill me or what? Zoro shouted with his teeth gaining sharp edges, once all the air from his lungs were knocked out after they collided on the deck of their own ship. Sorry, Zoro. Luffy laughed out, not budging from where he landed on Zoro's chest. What's wrong with Mary? The team captain asked with a hint of worry in his voice. He could feel the ship's spirit getting weak and tired. She took a hit. "We need to leave right now," Sanji summarized, taking a swig of his cigarette to hide his worry and concern. Looking at the horizon, Sanji noticed that only 20 out of the 80 ships survived. That would be less of a hassle for them, at least for now. "Let's retreat." Luffy grinned with a big smile as he hoped to where he felt the little spirit of Mary was resting. "Mary did a great job. Thanks for it." "It's an honor to assist you, Nika-sama." Mary smiled with a tired face. "Guys, please deal with the rest for me," Luffy hollered towards the Sea Kings, who let out a cheerful and happy roar at Luffy's orders. "I still can't believe whatever happened today," Chopper mumbled as he arrived with a first aid kit. His small body was tired from the training as well as the fight, but the adrenaline was still letting him do his job of a doctor for his friends. Luckily, none of them got any serious injury. "I know, it feels like I was dreaming." Vivi agreed with Chopper as she took a seat beside Karoo, who was slowly starting to wake up. "But it's over now." Nami chimed in after directing their ship back to the Sandy Islands direction. "Mary, I'm so sorry that I couldn't protect you," Usopp cried out as he brought the tools for patching Mary's sails and mast. "Mary's gonna be okay, right?" Luffy asked to Usopp while looking at the ship's spirit, who nodded to Luffy. "She has to," Usopp stated, as he began patching up the ship. "Mr. 6, we need to retreat." One of Mr. 6's own crew who got lucky to survive the onslaught trembled in fear as he stated the words. He was traumatized to say the least by the little kid who was coming after them, by the swordsman who was slashing their crew and other crews like a demon, and the Sea Kings who were still attacking them as if they didn't want a single one of them to make it alive. "Roar! Get away! You don't understand. Mr. Zero gave me this mission. He trusted in me to bring down whoever would be in the ship of the Straw Hats. Yet I failed. I would never be able to climb the ranks this way." Mr. 6 gritted out in anger and fury. "Growl. No, if you aren't retreating then I am, Mr. 6. A woman who was likely the partner of Mr. 6 stated in a cold voice. She was done with everything. The idea of never stepping on a ship was so welcoming. Snap. Ah. Miss Mother's Day didn't want to know whose screams were echoing in the ocean. She didn't want body of anyone falling lifelessly on the deck ever again. But no buts. If you aren't alive to get promotion, then what promotion are you aiming for? To be eaten alive by the Sea Kings or die in a sinking ship, Miss Mother's Day stated bluntly. They had been annihilated, and she knew that even if none of them wanted to acknowledge that, only she and Mr. 6 were one of the frontier agents who had survived the ordeal. She hadn't seen Mr. 7 and Miss Father's Day since their ship became the victim of the giant leg which tore through several of the other ships. She could only assume that they were long gone, dead, due to the treacherous waters of the Grand Line. She didn't even want to ponder on what fate fell to Mr. 10 and the lovely Miss Thursday. They were both tossed to the ocean by the straw hat-wearing monster, followed by a Sea King tearing through their flesh mercilessly. That very sight had traumatized her. They were lucky that none of the Sea Kings or the monsters came for their head until now. Indeed, Miss Father's Day. Mr. 6 stuttered, calling their ships to retreat at once. That's when he noticed the sheer number they have been pathetically reduced to. There were only 15 of the ships from 80 left. Some of them were still being attacked by the Sea Kings and the Sea Cat relentlessly. "All ships retreat at once," Mr. 6 ordered at once, commanding his own ship to catch up the pace. He didn't want to be eaten by any of the sea monsters who were ripping through flesh, snapping bones and spine, tearing the head, etc. etc. He registered the cries of the wound and the frightened echoes of the men he was supposed to command. He had done a pitiful job, only focusing on promotion and praise. Mr. 6's own group were crippling, limping and breathing heavily while they were manning the ship. Their frightened eyes and trembling limbs told him stories which he wasn't sure if he would want to hear at all. He was lucky that their ship was far too away from the vicious beasts of the sea, and his crew were rowing and sailing through the ocean as if their life depended on it, which was true. Mr. 6 wouldn't be surprised if it was only their ship which would survive the whole ordeal, since 5 more ships had already fallen victim to the Sea Kings and shore wasn't anywhere near. What happened? How did all went so wrong? Those were Mr. 6's last thoughts before the Den Den Mushi he had gotten from the unluckies started ringing. Puru Mr. 6 didn't want to pick up the call. knowing it was from none other than his boss Mr. Zero. How was he supposed to relay that they had utterly lost and their number had demolished to only 300 or something from 1800? He didn't know what would happen if he ever says it. Would he be hunted and later killed for his insolence? Poor Mr. Six braved himself, raising his hands to pick the call. "Are you sure, Mr. Six?" Miss Father's Day asked with wide frightened eyes. "I don't know," Mr. Six stuttered, looking at the snail. "But if I don't, then he will send someone and we are over then." Mr. Six trembled, his hands shaking as he finally picked up the damned snail. "Click, Mr. Six. What's the report? Kingdom Arabasta Port City, Nanohana. Looks like there's some kind of ruckus going on in that bar." Smoker spoke, observing the crowd gathering in front of a bar named Spice Bean. He inhaled a large swig of smoke from his cigarette, ready for his day to begun. He had a feeling that today's day will be a very long day. "What happened?" he inquired Toshigi. "Apparently 2 customers died all of a sudden." Toshigi spoke, overhearing some of the comments being thrown around by the locals. "I heard that 3 of travelers were having an eating competition when 2 of them died simultaneously. The most bizarre thing is that the other one is still eating without a care of her friends." "What?" Smoker asked, amazed and confused at Toshigi's answers, so he made his way through the crowd to see it for himself. True to Toshigi's words, there was a young girl of 17 years old who was stuffing her face like no tomorrow and also stealing food from the other travelers' food while laughing and giggling whenever she heard something funny about her companions. And if that didn't strike Smoker odd, then the big man sitting just near, who was most probably with them, was carrying a smile on his face and not panicking at all. "What is happening here?" Smoker questioned the girl and the big man with a frown on his face. That seemed to have worked as the girl stopped at her hysteric laughing. "Marines, damn," the pink-haired girl immediately cursed, seeing Smoker's Marine uniform. Smoker saw the big bear-type man also look at him silently, not removing his eyes from him. That confirmed one thing for Smoker: they were criminals. "Wake them up." Kuma spoke to his daughter, who immediately started shaking up her older brothers who were dumb enough to fall asleep in mid of a competition. Well, it wasn't their fault as they slept way too late at night and woke up too early. Kuma kept his eyes at the Marine. Even if he wasn't very strong, but he could give trouble to the other customers if he recognized them and a fight broke out between them. "Idiots! Get up!" Bonnie shook her older brothers violently. "Young lad, don't do that. Let the dead rest." A costumer tried to stop Bonnie, but he went unheard. The poor kids must have eaten the desert strawberry for them to die in this way. Another local tried to persuade Bonnie, but she wasn't listening to their bullshit. "This is the violation of the dead," another local began, and Bonnie had enough. She punched Ace and Sabo on their heads, getting a groan and them finally getting up. "You idiots, don't go falling asleep here," Bonnie chided at them with a frown. They came back to life. Several people shouted, seeing the brothers get up. "We have Marines here," Bonnie added quietly to her brothers, who were still groggy, but that woke them up completely. They put their guards on as they turned towards Smoker, whose eyes were wide at the commotion and recognition. "Yo, Smokey." Ace waved his hands at the Marine nonchalantly. He can feel several Marine presences just outside the inn where they were, but they were way too weak. "What brings the Supernova, the captain of the Spade Pirates, to this kingdom? Portgas d Ace?" Smoker questioned while glaring at the major threat right now. He could tell that the silent bear man was someone who was wanted too, but he couldn't recognize him. The Supernova? SSS Spades Pirates? What's he doing in a place like this? In all this? Toshigi finally came up with the answer to who was the big bear-like man to Smoker while sweating nervously. "See, Captain Smoker. That man is Kuma, the revolutionary tyrant," Toshigi provided to Smoker, whose eyes went as wide as he finally connected the man from his bounty poster. He was nothing like that with the soft expression which he was carrying at the beginning. "Kuma, the revolutionary? What the hell are you doing at this place?" Smoker asked, losing his cool for a second. "What connection do you have with the Spades?" he questioned instantly. "I'm not obliged to answer you." Kuma spoke with a stoic and calm expression. He wasn't going to give Marines any information or let Ace fall in any trouble due to him. The Revolutionary Army, aren't they the organization wanting to overthrow the world government? Don't tell me that the Spades and the Revolutionary Army are allies. Smoker theorized with wide eyes, his cigar almost falling from his mouth at the realization. Captain Smoker, I think you are making lots of speculations. Did you sense that? Ace interrupted Sabo, who was about to threaten the Marine captain. Wait, what are you saying, Ace ni? Bonnie asked with confusion sprawled on her face. Luffy. Ace and Sabo spoke at once as a large grin erupted on their faces. Luffy ni? Bonnie shrieked in amazement at that, already jumping off from her stool. Kuma, I'm leaving this to you. Sorry for that. Sabo apologized as he dashed past the smoke user, who was trying to process what's happening all of a sudden and how did they know Straw Hat Luffy. Smoker didn't chase after the noble man because he didn't know if he was wanted or not. But where they had threat to the kid, from their expressions it didn't look like that at all. So, what the hell was happening? Hey, that's unfair. Wait for me. Bonnie cried out, but it went unheard when Ace grabbed his bag and challenged the other two. It's a race till we reach him, Ace smirked while giving one last grin to Bonnie only for him to stop by Smoker. Wait right here. I'm not letting criminals like you pass, Smoker shouted, transforming his hands into smoke to capture Fire Fist and the Revolutionary. He couldn't let that kid get in contact with criminals like them, no way. Like you can stop me from getting to my little brother, Ace scowled darkly before coating his fists with armament hockey as he punched the smoke user's smoky hands away. He didn't want to engage in a fight and lose to Sabo. Therefore he dashed past him when Smoker was baffled that someone could punch his smoke body. Daddy, help me, please, Bonnie pleaded her father, who smiled and instantly used his powers on Bonnie for her to reach Luffy. After swatting Smoker's smoke hands away, it was time to leave now. Little brother, Daddy? Smoker uttered, utterly baffled by the new information which he got. Now we are finally here. I'd ask if you were relived, but I guess it's too early to know. Nami exclaimed as the sandy lands of Arabasta finally approached them. Do you have any plans for how to deal with the rebellion? Yes, I do have a plan, but I don't really know how it's going to work. Vivi spoke honestly, her eyes not deterring from her homeland. She was really glad to finally be here, but that was just the start of everything which she needs to do. So, this is an Arabastan city. Usopp stated, looking at the city which was just within the reach as he finally started to drop the anchor of the ship. Listen carefully guys. I want you all to control yourself while we are here. Nami proclaimed, looking at everyone seriously with her hands on hips. She felt someone missing among them, but before she could even realize who it was, Zoro caught her attention. You do realize that the one who needs to really hear that has already abandoned ship? Zoro asked with a sweat drop as he saw Luffy jump off from the Going Merry and run to the direction of the city. Wait for me. Fu-u-ddd, Luffy hollered as he jumped off from the Going Merry the instant it docked at the port of Nanohana. He could feel his siblings gathered in a bar, eating delicious food while competing with each other. He was hungry and wanted to meet them, that's why he jumped off before the Merry's anchor was even dropped. Zoro wanted to go after Luffy to keep him out of trouble, but he was really not in mood for his bullshit. Moreover, Zoro was sure that Luffy was not recognizable that much with him wearing a sleeveless red tee and black shorts. It wasn't like Nami hadn't tried to make him dress as a little kid once again. But this time Luffy had thrown a tantrum regarding colored shirt which Nami was forcing him to wear. Get back here! Nami shouted angrily as she saw the fleeing figure of Luffy until he just disappeared. She only hoped to pass through this town without a trouble, but who was she praying to? The gods didn't answer her calls on this matter ever. He doesn't really know about control, Usopp stated with a sweat drop. The crew even agreed with him. They really didn't want a double of what had happened in Logatown when they left Luffy to explore all by himself, but now it was already too late. They hoped and prayed with all their hearts that Luffy would not find trouble or for trouble to find him. They were really low on supplies and needed to restock them for their journey before Luffy makes a huge ruckus and they are practically forced to run or escape a horde of bounty hunters or worse Marines. What now? Vivi worriedly exclaimed as she looked at her country. The feeling of returning to her homeland was making her giddy, but at the same time she worried if someone would recognize her. Luffy's easy to find. Just look for the area with the commotion. That's where he'll be. Sanji assured Vivi from his experience as he jumped off from the Going Merry. He didn't want to add that Luffy would be the center of the commotion to Vivi to make her feel worried more. Sanji's right. Usopp added his thoughts with a deadpan expression. I wish he would at least remember that he has a bounty on the rubbery head of his. Nami sighed, rubbing her temples with plain defeat. It wasn't like she hadn't tried to instill within the monkey that his bounty was too large, but he always brushed it off like it was way too small, especially when we are in a big country like Arabasta. Just leave him be. Zoro butted in the conversation with a sigh. He wishes he could say that Luffy could take care of himself, but would he be bluffing to himself? Because he for sure knew that where Luffy is, trouble soon follows. Was it because he was a god? For now, let's go find some food. We can think about work after that. Zoro spoke, getting down from the ship, followed by Chopper, who carried his little doctor bag with him. Guys, I guess I should let you know that Karoo and I can't go with you. Vivi nervously spoke as all eyes snapped to her. What's wrong? You don't feel up to it? Usopp questioned Vivi, thinking that she was sick or something, cause if she wasn't, then why would she not come with them to her homeland? We both would be way too recognizable here. Vivi answered honestly with a sad smile. No worries, Vivi, my love, I'll take care of all of your shopping, Sanji gushed instantly, feeling heat rise up when he thought of the dresses he could see the girls wearing. On the other side, Luffy was running as fast as his starved body could to reach his siblings, when he finally found the straight road leading to the bar from where he was feeling their presence coming from. Wait for me. Luffy grinned widely, shooting his arms ahead of him and preparing himself for the launch. The passers-by's jaws dropped as Luffy's grin widened and his hand caught the two poles at the sides of the roads. Gomo Gomo no rocket. LUFFFFFYYYYYYYY ni ie. The moment Luffy's hands left the poles, he heard a familiar shout, only to see Bonnie falling from the sky, directly towards him. That's cheating, Bonnie, Ace and Sabo hollered at their little sister, only to stop dead at their path when they saw Luffy already having slingshot himself towards them. AHHHHHHHHHHHHH, stoop PPPPP. Both brothers screamed in terror, running away from the mini powerful projectile which was now carrying Bonnie over his head. But alas, fate was very cruel to them as all the air from their lungs left them and they crashed through several buildings without their consents. Woohoo, finally, I'm here. Luffy cheered as he plopped a spiraling Bonnie back on the ground only for her to regain her senses and throw herself at him. I missed you, Ni-chan, Bonnie exclaimed with excitement and a big smile to go with it. She. I missed Bonnie too. Luffy responded with his iconic laughter and grin, ignoring the wide eyes and dropped jaws of the people within the bar, who were looking at him with horror and anticipation. Yo, Uncle Kuma. What's up? Luffy grinned widely to the big man in the bar whose face contorted into a smile at his daughter's savior. I'm good, Luffy. Kuma spoke, his voice filled with gratitude and adoration. And I take it you are doing good too? Luffy excitedly nodded his head, which bounced a bit inhumanly. He was doing more than good. He was having a complete blast with his crew. Luffy was about to ask about Ace and Sabo's whereabouts when his stomach growled loudly, making him puff out his cheeks a bit before looking at the bartender. Gimme some food, mister, I'm starving, Luffy asked the bartender when his stomach growled, begging him for some food. He instantly plopped on an empty chair, banging the fork and the knife on the table while demanding for food. You might want to run for it, kid. The bar owner sweated profusely. In his eyes, not only the little kid had swept away the supernova and his brother but also the marine captain who was talking about arresting the revolutionary. Moreover, his rations for the week was already reduced to a measly grain due to the 3 teens who ate like bottomless black holes. He was really glad that he had got the money in advance by the big revolutionary guy, otherwise he would be drowning in losses by now if the marine decided to arrest them here. Here you go, Luffy ni. Bonnie excitedly shoved the ordered meals of Ace and Sabo to him. She wanted to hear all his stories, but before that Luffy has to fill up his tummy. Thanks, Bonnie. Luffy chirped, shoveling the food in his mouth in a hurry. He was really hungry since he hadn't ate nicely for the last 2 days. He had sensed Sanji's worry about their rations, that's why he had to regulate his hunger a bit. I thought I felt Ace ni and Sabo ni here. Where are they? Luffy questioned with his mouth full of food. No sooner than Luffy questioned about his older brothers, they were back from the numerous buildings they had crashed into. Kuma sighed at how much money he'll have to give as compensation. Damn it, Luffy, Ace shouted, as he finally came out of the hole where he crashed. His fire-Y body helped him to not get any serious injuries, but the same couldn't be said about Sabo, who was rubbing his injured left side. He was anything but angry at his baby brother. Luffy, Sabo groaned seeing his little brother eating like a chipmunk with his mouth full of ramen, steak, bread, meat and whatnot which his hands could get to. He was glad to meet him once again, but he really didn't want to have the same treatment of getting slingshot like before. He really wishes he could evade the killer rocket of Luffy's, but who was he kidding? He can't. No one can. That was the same time, the Marine captain, White Chase Smoker, finally chose to join the ruckus, only to see the kid whom he had been chasing for so long. He has so many questions for the kid that he needs the answer to. Straw Hat. Smoker instantly shouted seeing the boy stuffing his face in a carefree manner. He wondered if the kid has any brain cell to know what he should do at this situation other than eating and ignoring him. So, you did come to this country after all. You know him? Ace asked his little brother, who hadn't stopped stuffing his face yet. Luffy was trying very hard to remember the Marine before him. His hockey and the fruit inside him felt familiar, but that was it. Ace. Sabo. Luffy cheered, his face contorting into a wide smile despite the amount of food still stuffed inside his cheeks. It did look disgusting seeing the chewed food in his mouth, but no one commented. Who is he? A new recruit? It's recruit, Luffy, Sabo groaned. He was a bit disoriented but fine. That's also the Marine who chased Luffy in Logatown. Sabo answered to both Ace and Luffy, making Luffy nod his head, before realization Saint Luffy spit the food, which was inside his mouth, directly to the man in front of him, which happened to his poor Marine captain Smoker. Why are you here? It took all of Smoker's patience to not snap on the little shit of the kid before him. He admits that he is worse with kids, but an innocent kid like Straw Hat was somehow making him want to not arrest him, unlike the other pirates whom he had captured before. Straw Hat Luffy. Why? Smoker chewed the butt of his cigars aggressively, narrowing his eyes at the kid, hoping that would be enough to scare the kid before him, but that didn't even deter the kid from gobbling down food. Sorry Smokey. Luffy chirped, seeing his anger rising and also interrupting him from questioning him right here. But can we play later? I want to spend time with my family right now. Luffy spoke in a whiny tone and beamed when he saw Smoker deter from his resolution. Unknowingly he had used his infamous puppy eyes on the Marine captain to root him in his place. Luffy, you aren't supposed to give away who you are. Sabo chided, rubbing his temples. He wondered if Luffy would ever learn tact, but he knew it was a lost cause. Oops. Forget it then, Smokey. I didn't say anything. Luffy stuttered with sweat rolling down his forehead and refused to look at Smoker. That earned him groans and chuckles from his family. That kid, he is such a bad liar, Smoker thought as he felt his mind reboot again when the kid choked on his food. He was quickly handed a glass of orange juice by the teen-aged girl who was glued to his side. Smoker felt a headache coming when he finally realized that all the big shots, Fire Fist Ace, Kuma the revolutionary tyrant, and whoever the other two are connected to Straw Hat. Well, he at least got the source which corrupted the kid to choose the path of a pirate. Smoker wanted to catch those criminals and question the brat, but what was his loss to just listen to their conversation and give the government valuable information? He was sure that Straw Hat ought to utter invaluable information. But in the depths of his heart and mind he wished the kid wouldn't say anything too troublesome for him. What shall we do, Captain? Tashigi whispered from his side, observing the situation with her. He could see his subordinates desperately trying to avoid looking at the little kid. He wanted to sigh when he realized that the puppy eyes of the wannabe pirate kid managed to even melt Tashigi's heart. He would have reprimanded her, if not for him to also fall in the same trap despite being her senior. I'll wait here. Go out and warn the Marines to be ready at my signal. Smoker whispered back to Tashigi, who immediately left after giving him a nod. Ace? Why do you look like a zombie? Luffy questioned, taking Ace for the first time nicely. The dark eye bags under Ace's eyes and his slightly skinny form were not appeasing to Luffy at all. Ace's breath hitched as he heard the sentence and looked away from Luffy. He wanted to distract Luffy from the conversation. He even looked at Sabo for some help, but his twin brother just looked away from him. Ace nervously balled his fists, trying to find a way out of the conversation. There was a little reassurance that Luffy didn't know what had happened, but that was quick to shatter when he realized that someone has to spill the beans sooner or later unless he asks his mother and gets angry at both sides. It's a long story," Ace answered with a fake scowl, not wanting to get caught by Luffy, but he knew he was done for when he shuddered and looked at Luffy's eyes. Ace mentally cursed himself for making it obvious, but he really didn't want to have one more war with the Whitebeard pirates like the first time. He was still unsure about picking up their calls. He just needed a break from them. "I'm full, so I have all the time of the world to hear it," Luffy asserted with a serious experience, urging Ace to spill the beans. He even pushed away a plate full of food from himself. He wasn't hungry anymore, he was worried. He could feel something very wrong had happened once more, which had almost shattered Ace and brought those angry and sad eyes back. Even his mother or the winds hadn't warned him about it. He knew something was fishy when his mother was trying to swiftly distract him whenever he asked about Ace to her. He felt betrayed that none of them considered to tell him, not even Ace or Sabo or heck Dad. Wasn't he their little sunshine? Their son or little brother? Ace knew he was done when he saw Luffy not eating his food and tilt his head dangerously. The sandy winds which clashed outside was just another sign of Luffy's inner feelings. The hurt and betrayal in his eyes also didn't evade him. It made him look like a dangerous man ready to show his wrath to the person who had dared to enrage him. Puru Ace flinched suddenly, feeling the tense atmosphere get shattered by the snail in his pocket. He really thanked it cause he didn't know what he could or would have done to break Luffy out of his rage, but he wasn't sure if he could when Luffy uttered his next words. "Is it them?" Luffy asked, tilting his head a little. He knew who was calling. It was Whitebeard, but the way Ace flinched at the call was enough to provide Luffy the target, the one who had made Ace upset. Ace started nervously. His throat all of a sudden felt way too dry. He even felt his hands shake at his side. He didn't know why, but they just did. Was it because of his anger on the ones whom he trusted? Or was it because he feared what would happen next? Now that Luffy knew, he didn't really know why. "Can I talk to them?" Luffy asked with a tight smile, as if he was trying his best to keep himself on leash but was failing miserably if the sign of the wind picking speed was anything to say. "As much as I want to give them a piece of my mind, Luffy, but we can't do it here," Kuma instantly interjected, hoping against all hopes that Luffy would listen. He had planned to call the Whitebeards after assessing the situation with his own eyes with Dragon. And he knew that he was definitely going to give them a death threat with Dragon at his side, but now was not the time nor the place. "We can't give the Marines enough information." "Them?" Luffy asked, seeing the customers and smokers still standing there, but it looked as if they were afraid of something or scared to move or talk. Luffy didn't care about it when he was briefed by the winds about what had transpired with Ace and the Whitebeards. He didn't want anything right now but to tell the Whitebeards how badly they were fucked up for inflicting mental and physical damage on his older brother. With just one gaze on the people, locals and Marine alike inside the bar, all dropped unconscious like puppets cut off from their strings. Luffy made sure to put them in a peaceful slumber for as long as he wanted. "You can't do that," Ace tried to argue as his eyes widened at the sight and the moment the door to the bar slammed shut with the winds. He could hear shouts of the Marines stationed outside to get the door open, but none of their voice dared to enter the bar the next second. He knew it was Luffy's mysterious powers which were doing it, but he really didn't need the confrontation right now. "What can't I do?" Luffy asked innocently, as if he hadn't just locked them inside the bar with no one to enter or go out. Luffy's eyes fell on the ringing Den Den Mushi and then on Ace. "Ace, Snail, please," Luffy asked, outstretching his lanky arm. Ace didn't know why he passed the Den Den Mushi to Luffy with only slight hesitance. He didn't really know if he was ready to hear the voices of the ones who blamed him for hurting Thatch or chasing Teach. He just felt like a statue with a trembling fists and dry throat. If it was not the soothing presence of Bonnie, Sabo and Kuma or the relaxing haki of Luffy, then he didn't know what he would have done. He silently thanked all of them for holding him stable. Click, "We're really sorry, Ace. It's time you picked up the call. Ace, are you okay? Call." Mudlipple voices spoke over one another, but Luffy heard them all. They were sure were guilty of their deeds, but that doesn't change the damage they had done on his older brother. One look on Ace showed his tense shoulders heavy with the gruesome weight of betrayal and hurt. He could even feel his brother already feeling trapped by the voices which were strangling him to the past where he was insulted. "Stop," Luffy growled, his voice filled with rage, as it echoed in the silent bar. "Syra? Little buddy? We really need to apologize?" Haruta's pleading voice echoed with hurried footsteps which were leading the commanders to their captain's cabin to inform him of them finally getting in line with Ace, their bro. "Who do you think are you all to ask for forgiveness after what you done to Ace?" Luffy's voice thundered on the poor snail, making it shiver like the ones who were on the other side. The sky rumbled with blinding lightning, making the civilians of Nanohana look hopefully at the sky and pray for a downpour. "Lu Syra, please, it's all because of me." Thatch's pleading voice came from the other side aft. He swiftly corrected himself. The listeners in the bar could clearly hear the raging waves and rumbling thunder on the other side too. It made them wonder if it was Luffy's doing or the New World's terror. "Stop apologizing for someone else, Thatch," Luffy hissed, cutting off Thatch in mid-sentence. He didn't even use the nickname he had personally picked up for the bread hair, showing the intensity at which he was angry with the Whitebeard pirates. He had thought that they wouldn't have ever done what they did, but he was utterly mistaken. He was disappointed on the whole crew, except for Thatch. It was just a heat of the moment. Marco tried his best to apologize and state his reason for committing the crime of blaming one of his own. "I don't care why you did it, Marco. All I know is that you have hurt Ace enough. So, stay away, you flaming turkey," Luffy snapped at Marco. He was the first one to reach the commotion and deduce something utterly unexcusable. He accused Ace and beat him when Ace showed no signs of retort. As the captain of the ship, Whitebeard started, his tone heavy with regret and guilt. "Oh, please, stop the bullshit, Whitebeard." Kuma entered the fray. His normally gentle demeanor was filled with unwavering rage. He was getting pissed off with how the Whitebeards thought that they were even worthy of Ace's forgiveness after what they had done. "You accused Ace to be a traitor. You accused him of cold murder, which he never ever could do. And you know it all well, don't you?" Whitebeard was forced to be silent at that. Regretting his choices that night. He should have asked Ace. He should have given him the chance to speak or waited until Thatch was okay, but he jumped into conclusions and not even followed his intuitions. He felt very ashamed to accept that it was him who hit the final nail in his own coffin. He wondered if Roger was cursing at him from wherever he was right now. That man would have surely come after his head if he knew it. "We thought," Jozu started, feeling his shoulders slump with heavy regret. He could hear Thatch cry out. He could hear what he had told to Ace that night. He regretted it with his whole heart. "You thought wrong, Commander," Sabo chastised at once hearing Jozu's words. Deuce had told him what the commander had dared to say to his twin. If he was anywhere near them, he swore that he would crush their skulls with his bare hands. The stabbing hurt on Ace's face and the darkness which clouded his eyes yesterday was enough for him to raise hell on the Whitebeards. "You were warned, weren't you all?" There was a deadly glint in Sabo's eyes which somehow was replicated on the snail on the other side. "We are truly sorry for jumping into conclusions, Cyan." Whitebeard spoke at once, remembering the threat which Cyan gave them. He remembered his conviction of never hurting Ace, but just one night changed everything upside down. He wanted to warn Cyan of going against him, but at that time his morality told him not to. He needed to apologize to Ace first before deciding anything else. "Oh my, seems like someone remembered my warnings but failed to avoid it." Sabo snorted with an evil gaze in his eyes. For his siblings and family, he would do anything. Even if it meant to be a murderer. "Cyan, they aren't even worth that." Ace joined in for the first time in the conversation. He wasn't trying to save them. He felt relieved knowing that they knew the truth, but it didn't make them take their words back or his trust to not shatter. What was once lost is lost. He has no intention of doing any shit with them, but knowing that they didn't resent him and knew the truth lightened his shoulders, nonetheless. At least that way he wouldn't have to worry for Whitebeard to send his allies after his crew. It's not that he can't handle them, but he didn't know about everyone from his crew. "Ace, I'm so sorry. Please forgive." Several voices shot out in an instant, hearing the voice of the only one they needed to hear right now. "You all are spineless cowards. The worst of what I had witnessed till date." Bonnie spoke, cutting the others instantly. Her eyes were filled with sadness and defiance. She hated how the Whitebeard pirates were continuously asking for forgiveness. "How can you even think that Ni-chan will ever forgive you after what you have done?" Bonnie asked with a frown and a harsh glare. Even if she was only 10 years old, she knew enough about what were worth to be forgiven and what weren't. That was enough to shut everyone from the other side, except for Thatch's crying. Ace was relieved that Thatch was okay. He was the only friend he had in the Whitebeard pirates. Words once spoken can't undo the damage they had inflicted. Luffy spoke out his thoughts, his anger boiling beneath the surface as raindrops fell from the sky on the scorched sandy port of Nanohana, blessing the civilians with its presence. "What can we do?" Thatch's crying voice came from the other end. He didn't want Ace and the others, whom he saw as his own brothers and family, to stay angry with his pirate family forever. He didn't like what they had committed, but he felt heartbroken knowing that everything was shattered because he was too coward to not defeat Teach and accept what was happening. Thatch shouldn't ask for that. Luffy spoke firmly. Why shall someone else apologize for the deeds of others? He understood where Thatch was coming from. But Ace needed a break, and he knew it with how he avoided the calls. "Thatch, tell them to stay away from me and not to call me or my family." Ace spoke firmly, his cold eyes finally breaking free from the nightmare of the night which occurred. He would have been lost in those insults, if not for the anchoring hold of his loving family. "None of them can, except you, if you want." "Thank you, Ace," Thatch answered, biting back a sob. He knew this was the best they were going to get until Ace decides to call them by himself. "Whitebeard," Luffy's voice gained a deadly tempo as he spat the name. "We have a score to settle." That's all he said before disconnecting the call and closed his eyes for a moment. He was seething with anger and hurt at what had conspired, but the living presence of Ace and him feeling light was enough to make him smile at his older brothers and his little sister. "You okay, Ace?" Kuma asked, observing Ace's shaking figure as he finally took a seat on a chair and placed his head on the counter. Ace nodded, taking a deep breath to make himself stable. He was feeling overwhelming before, but right now he realized that he really needed this conversation to stop himself from spiraling into his dark thoughts which were about to engulf him. "Is Ace still going to chase that slimy man?" Luffy questioned his oldest brother, who nodded at the question without a hesitance. "I need to. He hurt my friend," Ace answered back as he raised his head to show the flaming determination in his eyes. He saw Sabo's face and the frown on Luffy's, but he wasn't going to let the bastard go away after hurting Thatch. He needed to leave Arabasta too and head for Jaya, where the bastard had supposedly escaped to, as Sabo informed him. But before that, he was going to hear some of Luffy's adventures in Grand Line. That's when he remembered another story. "Luffy, my dearest little brother." Ace started with a too sweet smile on his face. The others in the bar seemed to have caught onto his expression. "Mind telling your older brother what the hell was your rubber brain thinking in Logatown?" Ace's voice raised at the end of it, making Luffy's eyes widen. "Sabo?" Luffy questioned, looking at his other older brother with fake betrayal in his eyes. Sabo raised his hands up in defense. He wasn't the one who had told Ace of the fright Luffy gave him in Logatown. "What did Luffy need do?" Bonnie asked with a confused expression, as she saw Luffy slowly inching away from a very angry flame user. "Getting his own public execution." Sabo provided with a teasing smile to Luffy, making Bonnie's eyes widen. Kuma, who knew that, couldn't help but chuckle at it. He had heard of that, but he trusted his god enough to know that it was just one of his silly ventures and he would not die, but that didn't mean he wasn't scared for him. "You better start running, Luffy." Ace glared, with Bonnie agreeing. That was enough for Luffy to stuff all the remaining food on the plates before him and make a run for his life. He hadn't feared giving his life in Logatown, but now he very much does. Behind a crumbling wall, in the ports of Nanohana, the Straw Hat crew were assembled after gathering all the supplies which were required for them to continue their journey ahead. Chopper and Usopp were eager to explore the city, but the sullen mood of Vivi was stopping them from doing so. The atmosphere even felt heavy with doubt and uncertainties. "What's wrong, Vivi? Are you okay?" Chopper asked to the blue-haired girl, whose hands trembled under the piece of cloth she was holding. Vivi's lips quivered a little and her eyes shimmered with a glassy layer of fresh tears, but they were soon gone. "Sorry for that." Vivi apologized, realizing that everyone was worried for her. "I'm just feeling relieved now that it rained," she answered honestly. She could feel the happiness and ecstasy of the people in Nanohana about the merciful rain which blessed them with its presence. How long had it been that this port had stopped getting a drop of rain? She had thought that the dance powder's effect was working here too, but she was wrong, and that made her feel relieved. "I never thought it would be this bad," Sanji commented as he saw the crying faces of the civilians praying and thanking the gods above for their mercy while holding barrels filled with water like a precious treasure. "It was not natural," Nami uttered, looking nervously at the roads for any sign of the one who was responsible for it. She really didn't want to think about the terrible storm which they faced while defeating the Black Cat pirates, but it was to a lesser degree similar to that. The lightning which thundered, the wind which felt like blades thrown astray, and finally the skin-prickling rain, they were ingrained in her mind. "What?" Usopp, Vivi and Chopper instantly inquired with wide eyes. Usopp with a fear in his eyes, Vivi with nervousness, and Chopper with curiosity. "It's him?" Zoro questioned Nami with a raised eyebrow, who could only nod in response. Luffy had only told them that he could control wind and thunder, but till now Zoro knew that the Straw Hats who were present could easily deduce what Luffy could do more. Controlling rain or the weather. Wonder what happened this time. Zoro spoke out loud, thinking if he should have gone with Luffy or not. Vivi couldn't understand what the Straw Hat pirates were speaking, but she didn't want to indulge in it. She has far more burdened them with her presence. She didn't want to pry into their matters on top of it. "The town's too quiet for that idiot to be here." Sanji spoke, lighting a cigarette for himself. He wondered if Luffy was in trouble. In a corner of his mind, there was an urge for him to go and find that rubber brain of his captain, but he didn't want to leave the ladies, especially Vivi, who was looking sad, alone. "Vivi-chan, you said that you have a plan to stop the rebel army, didn't you, my love?" Sanji asked, trying to distract her from her thoughts. "For once I agree with the stupid cook." Zoro started with his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't want to say that he mostly agreed with the cook over all matters regarding Luffy, even if the said blonde threw him a glare. "If you really want to stop this thing before it starts, then it's better to act quickly. I do have a plan and I do agree that I need to act quick, but the agreement that I made with you was only to bring me here to Arabasta." A bonk on her temples instantly cut Vivi from speaking further. She looked at her attacker, Nami, with a frown of confusion. "Quit it? Are you still thinking like that?" Nami inquired. Even if she was scared to face Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, she knew that with Luffy on their side, Crocodile was nothing more than a goner before him. "We traveled this far to not let you run away. So, we are not going to leave you." "Yeah, Vivi. You are practically one of us now." Usopp persuaded Vivi. She really had become one of them when Luffy included her in his antics of training and goofiness. "And I bet Luffy would want to fight with this warlord." "You didn't need to bring that up, Usopp," Nami hissed at the long-nosed teen, making his jittery legs finally crumble to the ground. He was a little bit scared to think about the incoming battle ahead of them. But Vivi was his friend too, and he wasn't going to chicken out. "We are not gonna abandon you. That's the least you should be worried about right now." Zoro spoke, shaking his head a little, and sat down on a rock where Chopper was laying down and panting due to the heat. "Thank you, but besides, if this country gets destroyed, then we would be out of the big reward for bringing you here. You understand?" Nami uttered with the greedy symbols of money flickering in her eyes. That was enough to shut Vivi and make her nod hesitantly. "You are such a witch," Zoro grumbled, gathering Nami's attention on him. "Thank you, Zoro," Nami replied with a too sweet smile to go with. "I haven't forgotten your debt to me either. You better pay those 400,000 bellies." "What?" Zoro instantly shouted, hearing the insane number. "It went up." "It will go even higher if you don't pay me quickly," Nami answered with a devil grin. "Usopp, do you think you can throw me some money?" Zoro asked the long-nosed shooter, not wanting the amount of money to get more and more higher. "Nope, sorry, can't do." Usopp backed away, not wanting to get Nami's money-hungry wrath on him. "Nope, no way, he is going to fall into her trap." "Come on, just some." A bonk on Zoro's head made him stop from in his words. "What is it? Damn witch!" He still yelled out, only to notice Nami looking from the cracks of the walls. He could Sanji about to retort to his insulting words to Nami when he quickly slapped his hand on his bullshitting mouth. There was a commotion going on. "Marines!" Zoro answered to the ones who went stiff and on guard with his and Nami's sudden reaction. "What are they doing here?" Usopp questioned as he peeked through the broken wall using his googles to see clearly. What he saw made him freeze. "Sounds like there's something going around in the town." Zoro gave his opinion as he observed the commotion. "Maybe some pirate." Zoro stopped dead on his words once he saw Luffy in front of all the people who were chasing him. How the hell did that freaking idiot end up there of all places? "Hey, Zoro!" Luffy shouted, giving off their location as well as running towards them. For the love of, Zoro chided at Luffy, only to realize it was of no use now as he himself also gave away their location. He instantly hauled up 2 barrels of water and made a run like the others. "Look, there's the rest of his crew," a marine shouted, noticing them instantly. This was not what they needed. "We need to get back on the ship." Vivi provided the crew hurriedly as she hauled a bag of necessities herself. She couldn't believe what she was witnessing, but with Luffy in the equation, she agreed that things are bound to get crazy. "What? Are we leaving the island?" Usopp asked, getting all confused but still handling a barrel. He knew that he should get used to Luffy's antics of getting into trouble, but it didn't make things easier at all. One look at Chopper showed that he was worried but handling the situation better than he was. "No, we'll take the ship to travel along the river so we can dock further inland. From there, the desert we need to cross is right ahead." Vivi informed Usopp hurriedly, not even taking a chance to turn back. "Luffy, wait right there, you idiot," another man with a tattoo on his biceps reading, "Ace," was shouting just after him. He was the closest one near Luffy, who could possibly catch up to him, but luckily Luffy was managing to dodge him each time miraculously. "How dare you give me a heart attack? You idiot! Lose them before you come here," Nami shouted, as she saw Sanji hauling all the food supply and making a run for it with the others, who had already started running ahead. She didn't want to know how Luffy had managed to give someone heart attack during his short stay in this city, or how that person washed their captain. Nope, she wasn't interested at all. "I'm sorry," Luffy yelled, yelping when a ball of fire just brushed past him. His eyes widened in shock and fear for his life as he realized that Ace was way too serious on catching him and teaching him a lesson. "Luffy, what were you even thinking?" Bonnie yelled loudly, running as fast as she could to catch Luffy. "How could you wish to even leave me behind that way?" "I'm really sorry," Luffy shouted once more, knowing that if he stopped by any chance then he has to face the wrath of Bonnie even. And he really didn't wish to turn into a baby of all thing for his crew to tease him further. He had enough of that when they were back home. "How dare you do whatever you did that to the pretty lady?" Sanji barked angrily, almost stopping in his tracks to beat the shit of the rubber idiot when Nami bonked on his head, making him realize the situation and see the marine captain of Logatown in the fray. "Raise the anchor," Luffy shouted to Mary as Usopp was just near to climb up their ship. He heard a light giggle from Mary before she granted his request. He really had the audacity to pout at that, forgetting the trouble he had plunged himself into. Even if he was scared for his life or the punches he would be bestowed when caught, he was really having fun. Feeling nostalgia hit him. He wanted to laugh too, but he knew if he did that, he would be getting 10 times the lecture he is supposed to get. Nope, he wasn't in for it. "The rest of you stand back down," Smoker shouted angrily as he ran past his crew. He was angry when he woke up to being crushed under several pairs of shoes only to find the bar empty and the Straw Hat Kid getting chased by the big shots whom he called his family. He wasn't going to let him escape, now that he has finally found him. "I won't let you run away, Straw Hat," Smoker shouted out, his hands turning into an elongated smoky fist to capture the kid. But the said kid freaking dodged it without even seeing, just like how he had done in Logatown. It was pissing him off. "I'm sorry, Smokey, but I can't stop now," Luffy yelled back to the kind Marine, who was trying to get him away from the ruckus to get answers to his questions, but he really can't stop right now. "Why did you come to this island, Strawhat? What are you after?" Smoker shouted out, as his hands turned into a smoky snake to chase after the kid, but it was getting impossible to catch him. "I am only here to beat up Crocy," Luffy shouted out the answer, hoping that would be enough to let Smoker leave him alone, but unfortunately the smoke user wasn't done yet. "Crocy?" Smoker thought before realizing that it was Crocodile whom the kid was referring to. But why would he want to even fight the warlord? "Don't tell him that," the Straw Hat crew shouted in unison at their idiot captain who was giving them away. "Oops. Forget that, Smokey," Luffy shouted back in panic, making almost everyone sweat drop. "Damn it, Straw Hat. Why did you smile when you were faced with death in that execution?" Smoker yelled out, his frustrations getting the better on him as he repeatedly failed to capture the kid. Unknown to him, he just added fuel to the fire in which Ace and Bonnie were wrapped. "Smile, you fucking idiot. When I catch you, you'll forget all those smiles." Ace shouted angrily, trying to catch his baby brother and wanting to give him a good fist of love like his grandfather, but that slippery brat was dodging him like no tomorrow. He knew that he was overreacting, but he couldn't help but feel his heart crash and adrenaline pump in his veins like crazy after hearing about Luffy's deeds. He knew Luffy's ideas are always insane, but this one was just the epitome of it. Hell, he had never thought that Luffy would willingly put himself in such a situation where he could easily break free but refused to. Smokey, you aren't helping at all. Luffy panicked, feeling the intense haze of Ace's fire. He knew it wouldn't burn him, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to take a chance right now when Ace really needed to let off steam. Arg! Luffy slipped face first on the puddle of sand, but in that instant, he was quickly picked up by Kuma. We need to lose the Marines. Right now, Kuma tried to justify his actions as he instantly teleported them on board the Mary, carrying a wet and muddy Luffy in his large arms. Thank you, Uncle Kuma. Luffy panted in relief in the midst of his shocked crew who recognized the name and can only point Kuma to be harmless to Luffy. If Kuma the revolutionary tyrant would have shown even just a speck of malice towards their captain, then the Straw Hats wouldn't have hesitated to fight with tooth and nail to get back their captain. The Mary already started setting sail, making them extremely relaxed knowing those crazy people can't follow them, but how wrong were they? They had not even got too far when two of Luffy's chasers jumped aboard with frown and scowl on their faces. Luffy, who the hell did? Daddy, it's cheating. I don't know what my captain did, but if you two care for your lives, back off. Zoro spoke coldly with his eyes narrowed as he pointed his sword at the fireman, judging him to have more strength than the other lady. He wasn't afraid to use his swords at whoever the man was to protect his captain. Sorry, miss, I can't let you hurt my captain. Sanji flicked his cigarette to the ground, crushing it under his shoes. I'd rather prefer you get off board by your own will. We won't let you hurt our captain. Nami narrowed her eyes at the girl, drawing out her climatact which Usopp had built for her. She wasn't letting Luffy to get chased or beaten by the likes of them. Yeah, leave our captain alone, you jerks. Chopper growled as he stood tall in his monster form, ready to fight to protect the one who showed him the fun of being a pirate. Yeah, the brave warrior Usopp will force you to leave if you did anything funny. Usopp stood his ground, pointing his slingshot to the girl. He didn't want to deal with the fire wielder at all, but he wasn't going to back down now even if he was hella nervous. Hopefully, the monster trio would be enough. I can't let you harm Luffy. Even Vivi was standing her ground, with her trusty weapons ready at her side. She had already sent Karoo with the message for her father, which is why she couldn't rely on her partner in this fight. Guys, I'm okay. Luffy tried to speak, as he felt Ace and Bonnie look astonished for a second and then wanting to get to him the next. He didn't want to deal with them, but he also didn't want to involve his crew in this sibling squabble. I have to say your crew is really protective of you. Sabo smiled while sitting idly on the railing of the ship with one leg over the other. Yes, they are. She, Luffy chuckled, making his friends look at him with confusion. You idiot, you are dead. Ace lashed out, effectively dodging Zoro's swords, Sanji's kicks, Nami's climatact, Usopp's ammo, Vivi's attempt and Chopper's punch. I'm so sorry. Luffy yelped, trying to jump over to his mother but being caught by Sabo, who flung him back to the deck. Sabo was also upset that he couldn't lecture Luffy earlier because of the scare he had felt firsthand, but right now he very much wanted to show Luffy what he did wrong. Sabo's action confused the Straw Hats, minus Chopper and Vivi, who were afraid that they have one more attacker on board. The East Blue crew was confused of why Sabo would throw his little brother to the mouth of danger when he showed that he was way too caring and doting big brother. Sabo, what's going on? Zoro asked, keeping an eye on Luffy, who tired to run in circles around the deck to get away from the fire user and the pink-haired girl, yelling, "Traitor!" and "I'm sorry." He would not hesitate to jump in to protect his captain even if the former seemed to know hockey. That only served as a reminder for him to train more to unlock his hockey. What else could happen? Sabo chuckled mysteriously before settling into a smirk. That rubber GS a heart attack. Siblings? The Straw Hats questioned in confusion, looking at Sabo, who nodded at that. You mean that lovely lady over there is Luffy's sister? Sanji asked with tears dropping from his face. He was really jealous of Luffy right now for not telling him about his sister. Malorine, please beat the crap out of that dumbhead. Sanji gushed, not seeing the intense pair of eyes staring at him. "Ag, I'm sorry." Luffy tried to apologize the umpteenth time, but his luck gave him out when he was finally plumed on the deck with a fist infused with hockey on his head. It hurt so much, that's why he didn't want to be caught. "Ace knee. Hold him for me." Bonnie smirked evilly, as he approached a darkly grinning Ace too. Luffy panicked and squirmed as Ace quickly sat over him, not letting him escape. He really didn't want that. "I'm really sorry. Please," Luffy cried, squirming and flailing, but it wasn't of any help as a hand smacked on his head and he instantly shrunk. Even Ace got up from him, leaving him exposed to his crew. "What the heck?" the crew shouted, instantly seeing a chibi Luffy squirm through his clothes, in which he was drowning. "Bonnie, change me back," Luffy whined, his voice high and squeaky like a 5-year-old. He got up from the deck with a pout and glared at Bonnie, which was not even effective. "It's not funny." "Not until you realize your mistake," Bonnie huffed with her hands crossed over her chest. "He's so cute." Vivi and Nami gushed, seeing Luffy look disheartened at Bonnie's words. Even Zoro and Sanji were trying to stifle their laughter at Luffy's current situation. Meanwhile, Usopp was openly laughing at little Luffy and Chopper was kind of worried if it would have any adverse effects. "This way you can't run now." Bonnie grinned before picking Luffy in her arms. "Ah? Now look who is in trouble. It's little Luffy." Bonnie laughed, making Zoro, Sanji and Usopp laugh out loud at Luffy's expense. "Hey, I need my fill too." Sabo rushed to the deck asking for little Luffy to be handed to him, who was squirming under their grasps. Not giving, Bonnie poked her tongue out while Luffy dangled from her arms, huffing and puffing. "Ah, please, quit it, we have a lecture to deliver." Ace frowned, cutting Sabo in his pleas. He wanted to so dearly not do it, but he knew that someone has to, otherwise the reckless bumbling idiot would go rushing at all harm. He really wanted to rely on Uncle Kuma to do so, but seeing him not even interfering made Ace give up hope on him. He knew that he would never even scold Luffy, except for the times of training, and you can't pull over that face. Ace shielded his eyes instantly with a pair of dark sunglasses to cover his eyes, resigning to his fate of him being the one to scold Luffy. His hands stretched Luffy's cheeks with hockey as he continued. "Do you have any idea what you had put us through with your insane stunt?" "I'm so WWY. Luffy tried to speak through his stretched cheeks. He felt the anxiousness build up within Ace, Sabo, Bonnie and even Kuma, making him realize for the first time that him not moving from that execution stand would have hurt his family and friends. "I just wanted Sabo and Papa to come out. They were playing with me." "Luffy, I admit we were hiding, but risking your life like that?" Sabo asked, rubbing his temples. Despite Luffy's pout and sad face, he steeled himself, trying his best to not fall in the trap of those big puppy eyes. "I really thought that I lost you there for a second." "Please don't do that anymore, it hurts to know we could have lost you." Bonnie spoke, squeezing Luffy a little as she back hugged him. She could see him hanging his head down sadly, making her feel bad. "What are you guys talking about?" Usopp asked hesitantly as he overheard the conversation. Everyone did, and they were curious about it. Luffy could have escaped his own execution in Logatown before it even started or got bad, but he chose not to. Kuma answered, speaking for the first time. He had been observing the Straw Hat Pirates till now, noticing their every move. He has to tell that Dragon was right in saying that Luffy's ragtag crew was surely funny and protective. Of course he did that. Zoro deadpanned. Since the time Luffy had shown them the hockey techniques, he had wondered why Luffy hadn't broken free of those wooden planks by himself. Well, now he got his answer. "So, you gave us fright just because you wanted to or were bored?" Sanji questioned Luffy, who shook his head at that statement. "I just wanted to know how Roger felt during his execution," Luffy answered with wobbly lips. "That didn't mean you had to die there, you idiot," Ace sighed, removing the glasses as they were not at all helping him. He was just getting soft with each look on Luffy's whiny face. Ace ruffled Luffy's hair softly as he took him in his arms. "It scared me when I heard about it. On top of that, you didn't even pick my call when I tried." Ace spoke in a gentle tone. "I'm sorry, Ace," Luffy spoke, meaning his words this time. "Just promise us you won't do that again?" Sabo asked, patting Luffy's little head, who sniffled at all the scoldings. "I promise," Luffy cried as he hid himself in Ace's arms, who shook his head fondly before patting his back gently. "We were just worried about you, Ni-chan." Bonnie sniffled too, rubbing her eyes. "Ni-chan?" Chopper uttered, looking confusedly at the pink-haired girl, who looked older than 17. This also caught the attention of Ace, who remembered that they were having an audience. "It's probably late now, but nice to meet you guys." Ace started holding onto his baby brother while addressing the crew which he was meeting for the first time. He sure has to tell Luffy has a knack of picking people. "Thanks for taking care of my kid brother. I know he is a handful." Ace bowed slightly to the crew with Chibi Luffy still in his hands. "Oh, no, not at all." The crew spoke at once with straight faces while waving their hands. "Come on, be honest. This is Luffy we are talking about. Isn't he a bit too much for you to handle at times?" Ace laughed with Sabo and Bonnie agreeing. Even Kuma was nodding his head at that, seeing the modesty of the crew. "Not at all," the crew answered again. "You got a good crew, Luffy." Bonnie giggled happily to Luffy, who still refused to come out of Ace's hands. "Alright, let us then properly introduce ourselves since we were a bit rude just barging in." Ace spoke with a smile on his freckled face. He felt a bit embarrassed barging in all angry, probably not a good first impression, but he doesn't mind much. "I'm the captain of the Spades Pirates, Fire Fist, Ace, and also this little bumbling kid's oldest brother." Of course, he would be connected to the big shot, Fire Fist, Ace too. Zoro groaned. He should have thought that possibility with Luffy in the fray, especially when his grandfather's Garp and father's dragon. The Fire Fist Ace who shoved a fuck you to the Marines when you were given the proposal of being a warlord? Sanji asked with his eyes wide. It was all over the news of how Fire Fist had enraged the world government by not only rejecting their proposal but also making a shit show in one of the Marine bases to show a big fuck you to them. "The one and only," Ace replied with a smirk. "What else did I accept?" Nami mumbled, rubbing her hand. "His dad is a big shot after all." "I'm Kuma," one of Kuma started, thinking it was time for him to introduce himself but was interrupted. "Oh, my Malorian, please excuse my insolence, but can you please introduce yourself to this humble peasant?" Sanji gushed with hearts floating in his eyes, which gave him an intense stare from Kuma, his smile turning into a frown as he did not like how Sanji openly flirted with his daughter. Luffy, finally in his chibi form, squirmed in Ace's grasps as he couldn't understand why Ace was suddenly shaking and snickering while Sabo was glaring daggers at Sanji, which all went ignored by his cook who had his eyes fixed on Bonnie. Luffy couldn't understand, so he finally toddled down on his own when Ace was distracted by trying to control his laughter at something. Bonnie felt annoyed by the blonde-haired, whom she knew as Sanji. She recognized all of Luffy's crewmates, but she didn't like Sanji interrupting her father from introducing himself and acting rudely. "I'm Jewelry Bonnie, Luffy's youngest sister." She huffed out with a childish pout, confusing everyone, especially Sanji, as she was sure that she looks older than 17. "But you look older than 17. Sanji uttered with confusion laced in his voice. That made Bonnie look at her father, asking silently for his permission, which she got with a soft, gentle smile in tow. "I'm 10 years old," Bonnie uttered before changing back to her original form, getting squeals from the ladies of the group and snatched into hugs by the navigator in her dance costume. "Hey!" Bonnie squeaked in protest before she was cuddled by Nami. "Look at you. You are so cute," Nami squealed, hugging Bonnie to her, eliciting a soft chuckle from Kuma. Sanji felt like an utter shit as he dropped to his legs dramatically, earning a sigh from Zoro. He couldn't even respond to that cheeky swordsman as he felt worse after practically flirting with a child. What the hell was he even thinking? "Is Sanji okay?" Luffy asked in his chibi form, tilting his head a little to see the devastated look on his cook's face. "Luffy, I made a huge mistake," Sanji mumbled furiously but got patted by Luffy's little hands, making him look at him, showcasing Luffy's concerned chibi face. He looked too childish and cute right now. There, Sanji will be okay," Luffy chanted to Sanji, who felt his world stop crumbling at those words. Sanji nodded, determined to make amends with the little girl. "I'm sorry for my misbehavior, Bonnie-chan," Sanji apologized, getting on his legs and bowed a full 90-degree like a gentleman. "Finally, you are doing something productive." Zoro snickered at Sanji, but Sanji didn't move until his apology was accepted. Why are you apologizing to me? Apologize to my daddy, Bonnie huffed from her place in Nami's lap. She kind of enjoyed how she was softly making her hair. Even the attention from the princess of the Arabasta kingdom felt good to her. On it, Sanji spoke, turning to Kuma and bowed down once again. I'm sorry for my insolent behavior, sir. It almost looked as if Sanji had harmed his in-law's daughter, making Usopp, Zoro, Ace and Sabo burst out into peals of laughter. It's all right. Kuma spoke with a light smile, forgiving Sanji but still aiming to keep an eye on him. I'm Bartholomew Kuma, the revolutionary tyrant. Also, one of the founding members of the Revolutionary Army. Kuma finally got the chance to introduce himself. And for those who don't know me, I'm Sabo, the Chief of Staff of the Revolutionary Army. Sabo dramatically bowed, lifting his top hat a little, not giving some of the crew a chance to relish on the information dump. Also, the twin brother of Ace. The Revolutionary Army? Vivi was the first one to react with her eyes wide. Please tell me you don't have connections with the rebellion going in Arabasta, she instantly asked. No, we don't, Kuma replied calmly, making Vivi take a breath of relief. But then why are guys here in Arabasta? Zoro questioned out. Seeing Usopp's brain already rebooting, Sanji sulking due to his mistake, Nami busy with cooing at Bonnie and Chopper confused over the situation. Yeah, why here? Luffy questioned, finally making his presence known and got quickly picked up by Sabo, making him squeak. I didn't get my chibi Luffy fill, Sabo pouted as he carried Luffy in his arms affectionately. And Princess Vivi, the Revolutionary Army wanted to check over Arabasta due to all the rebellions taking place. Sabo squinted his eyes at her. He knew that whoever Luffy accepted in his circle couldn't be evil, so the question was whether the king of Arabasta was corrupt or there is someone behind the scenes pulling strings. He highly suspects the latter as he overheard a conversation regarding the assembly of Baroque Works here by a certain someone. We are here to provide support to the kingdom in any ways we can. Kuma spoke calmly, seeing Vivi's eyes shine with tears and hands shake at her. They were unsure of who the real culprit was, and seems like the information was with the missing princess of Arabasta. So please inform us about the situation. Kuma knew some information from asking around the locals with Bonnie helping him, but all they got to know was of how the king of Arabasta was illegally getting dance powder, a powder which is used to summon rain but at the cost of drought in the neighboring countries. This led to a good amount of rain to fall in Alarbana but not a single drop in the other towns of Arabasta, leading to a severe drought. Vivi nodded determinedly and started explaining the situation of her country from the beginning. Chapter 36. A hectic day 2. Hey Bonnie, how did you change your and Luffy's age? Do you also have fruit powers? Usopp questioned curiously with a hint of anxiety. He would have called the fruit powers as devil fruit, if not for the fact that it upsets Luffy and that little guy right now was already pouting around in his chibi form as Bonnie refused to revert him back to his original state. I ate the Toshi no Mi fruit. It allows me to manipulate my age or anyone I target. Bonnie answered, puffing her chest, showcasing her pride in her ability. But it's only temporary for now. How does it affect the victim's body? Chopper asked as he eyed Luffy, who was climbing up on a barrel of water with the strength in his little body. And how long before he turns to normal? Chopper asked, a bit worried for Luffy, but he felt glad that Ace was keeping a close eye on Luffy. I don't know those complicated details yet. Bonnie shrugged. She was working on her powers, but she hasn't forced anyone to be in their chibi form till now, except for Luffy, who usually stays in that form for an hour or so. She wasn't sure about it. Can you change me into my older version? I mean, just for a bit, to see what it's like? Usopp asked, gathering his courage. He really wanted to know what he would look like when he gets older. Would he be the brave warrior of sea already? I also want to see, Chopper uttered, looking at Bonnie with an innocent expression. He also wanted to partake in this activity and feel stronger. That sounds interesting. Would you do it, Bonnie? Nami asked, her eyes lighting up at the thought of getting older. She bets she is still going to be gorgeous and youthful with tons of money. Splash Luffy, who was practically unattended, fell directly in the barrel of water which he was trying to open with his small little grabby hands, making the barrel dump on him and water to splash on the deck. At least that got the mud out of his skin and him clean, even though wet. Luffy, Sanji groaned, coming out of his sulking zone. That was precious drinking water, you idiot, he rubbed his temples in exhaustion. I'm sorry, Sanji, Luffy uttered, his voice resonating inside the barrel he was trying to get out of, but it was no use. Ace chuckled seeing his little brother squirm under the barrel before finally lifting the barrel away from him. You really are chaotic, huh, Lil Luffy? Ace smirked, seeing Luffy huff and pout at him. Come, let's get you a change of clothes. I don't have this small cloth, Ace, Luffy pouted, looking at Bonnie asking silently to change him back to his original form. We are playing a game, Luffy wanna join? Then I will change you back, Bonnie grinned widely, making Luffy nod instantly. He was all in it if at the end he gets to his original form. Ace sighed, seeing Luffy won't be changing clothes anytime, so he just heated his little body with the help of his flame fruit, leading his clothes to get dry in an instant. You are such a menace, Luffy. Ace spoke fondly, as Luffy pulled him to the game. He even forced Zoro and Sanji to join in. He was about to call Vivi, Sabo and Kuma too, but they were inside the kitchen discussing about the rebellion going on in Arabasta and the best course to take. So, who goes first? Bonnie asked, hopping out of Nami's lap, and grinned widely. Me, Usopp raised his hands excitedly. You're in, old man. Bonnie giggled evilly before transforming Usopp to his 40s. MN89ZLF. I couldn't insert the images here like the other websites. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully the links will give an idea of what's happening. Also, please ignore the bad future and the scars. I feel so powerful. Usopp looked down at himself, amazed by his own muscular, tall body. There was also an insane level of confidence which he had never felt within himself. It made him giddy with joy, wanting to grow up older. You look amazing, Usopp, Chopper uttered with sparkling eyes. I'll be the brave warrior of the seas by 40 for sure, Usopp commented, standing tall, his aura not even excluding his false belief but only the truth. It felt so surreal to him. So muscular, Luffy squealed with sparkling stars in his eyes, as Usopp flexed his muscles happily. Hey, this game looks fun. Zoro smirked, wondering how muscular he would be when he hits his 40s. Want to go next then? Bonnie asked with a gleeful twinkle in her eyes, making Zoro nod with a ready smile. HTRSLY2. Ignore the scar in the left eye. Zoro looks so awesome, Luffy exclaimed with bright shining eyes at Zoro's even more impressive muscular build. Those muscles are no joke. Usopp spoke with wide eyes as he pressed on Zoro's biceps for it to not even move. Those were stiff with Zoro flexing them. The muscle head grows more muscle. Sanji teasingly sighed with a dramatic expression. What else could I even think? It's better than you, love cook, Zoro retorted to Sanji with a pissed off look. It looks as if Zoro could take down an entire army by himself, Chopper spoke with awe evident in his eyes. I bet I am going to get muscles too. Luffy grinned proudly, jumping up and down in excitement. Bonnie, make me older too. I want to be big like Zoro and Usopp. Luffy excitedly tugged on Bonnie's peach-colored Arabastan costume. Not yet, Luffy. You need to learn your lesson first. That's why you will be getting it at the end. Ace picked Luffy up, not wanting him to slip on the water he spilled on the deck, which was being used as a mirror to see the Straw Hat's older forms. Moreover, Luffy was high like a kid on sugar, which made him note to not provide him the Fishman Island's famous candies which he had brought with him. He would probably pass it to the cook for the safekeep. Not fair. Luffy pouted but stayed in Ace's arms. Can I go next then, Bonnie-chan? Nami asked politely, making Bonnie nod her head excitedly and transform Nami to her 40s. 3YRQRPJ. This is amazing. I feel so elegant. Nami touched her cheeks, feeling it so soft and not finding any wrinkles. She twirled in her place, her hair long now, making her feel too giddy. You look so beautiful. My heart can't take the charming shine which you are radiating, my Nami swan. Sanji nodded, his nose dripping with blood as he saw Nami smile like a literal angel. Witches always stay young. Zoro grumbled, making Sanji instantly fight with him. I bet you are going to have lots of admirers. Usopp grinned at Nami, making her feel even more happy. Nami's beautiful. Even Bonnie commented, making Usopp and Ace agree with her. Nami looks like Nami, Luffy chirped, giving his own thoughts too. I wonder if my fur will be that shiny too. Chopper spoke, seeing the gorgeous shine in her hair and skin. Want to see it for yourself? Bonnie asked happily, making Chopper shyly nod. 4FKMJGK. Chopper looks like a reindeer. Luffy squealed with happiness and excitement. I'm a reindeer, damn it. Chopper uttered in embarrassment. His head felt heavy and one touch of it told him the cause. He has grown big antlers. Way to go, Chopper, Usopp said with a big smile, seeing his grown-up friend. Those antlers look cool. Ace provided his own thoughts as he marveled at the grown reindeer before him. See cool? Chopper repeated, feeling heat rush into his face. Stop joking around, he uttered as his face lit up with giddiness and he danced, flailing his arms around. You finding me cool doesn't make me the least bit happy, you jerk. Despite his words, Chopper showed how much happy he truly was through his actions. Your crew sure is funny. Ace laughed, ruffling Luffy's little head, who beamed up at the praise. Ace knee. You wanna go next? Bonnie asked with a bright smile on her face. Why not? Ace stood up from his crouching position, not afraid and not even thinking about his actions as he allowed Bonnie to use her fruit on him. It would be the first time she would be doing it on him. BNVNVC. Hey, what else can you expect from your big brother, Halu? Ace smirked on his face. Damn, that's really a hardcore transformation, Usopp uttered, his jaws falling down at the sight of Ace. He had expected Zoro to be the muscle man amongst all of them, but not about Ace. He wondered if Luffy would even turn muscular when he hits his 40s. I bet I can still kick your ass that time, Luffy chimed in, making the Straw Hats literally think about a pint-sized Luffy going against his muscular big brother Ace. Luffy, you sure are brave. Nami chuckled, picking the 5-year-old in her arms with a chuckle. Do you have any proof to back your words? Sanji asked with a raised eyebrow at Luffy. Luffy is a monster. So his older brothers have to be more bigger monsters than him. Who's gonna kick whose ass, Lu? Ace smirked, bringing his itching hands towards Luffy, who sweated nervously. I can totally. Luffy got attacked by Ace's tickling, making him giggle and flail in Nami's arms. Shi. Santo shi. Luffy laughed, crying tears of joy. Hey Cook, you don't want to try? Bonnie asked, looking at Sanji, whose eyes instantly sparkled with tears. Would you allow me to? Sanji asked with wide glistening eyes. Yeah, why not? Bonnie shrugged, making Sanji wipe down his tears and her to transform the cook instantly in his 40s like the others. SSJSJSB, Sanji. You look so cool, Chopper excitedly informed Sanji, seeing his gentlemanly appearance. Thank you, Chopper, Sanji grinned, feeling his hair long and wavy at the end. It was really a new feeling as he looked at his reflection in the water spilled by Luffy on the deck. He really liked it. Your face doesn't have a single wrinkle too. Nami praised Sanji, making him feel high in clouds. Not bad, Cook, Bonnie herself agreed with Nami. Thank you, my lovely Nami Xuan. Sanji nodded in excitement, which looked a bit odd in his matured face, and taller and broader body stature. And thank you so much, Bonnie-chan. He calmed down and spoke to the pink-haired girl. I'd have said you look better than right now, but guess you are never gonna change. Zoro commented with a smirk on his face, deliberately teasing Sanji. Says the musclehead, Sanji retorted back. Now my turn. My turn. Luffy giggled happily as he saw all of his crew enjoying. I bet I am gonna look cool, Luffy boasted as he squirmed in Nami's grasps and was finally put down. Yeah, now it's your turn. Let's make you an old man, Mi-chan. Bonnie giggled at the thought of making Luffy grow up. Yeah, a cool old man, Luffy giggled, excitement evident in his doe eyes. Sanji and Zoro stopped fighting amongst each other while the others gave their full attention to Bonnie and Luffy. They were eager to know how Luffy would look in his 40s when he looks so younger even when he is just 17. What are you guys doing? Sabo came out of the kitchen finally after their long serious discussion on the matter. Bonnie is going to make me a cool old man in 40s like Ace, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Nami and Chopper. Luffy giggled, patiently waiting for his turn to come. Nami, you look so gorgeous even in your 40s. Vivi came out of the kitchen too with a baffled smile seeing the older forms of the Straw Hats. She was confused how they did it, but seeing Luffy being turned to a kid by Bonnie earlier was enough to give her answer. It was Bonnie's doing. Vivi ni, do you want to try too? Bonnie asked happily, ignoring Luffy's gasps. Hey, Bonnie told it's my turn. Luffy frowned angrily, stomping his legs on the deck. You should let Luffy try first, Vivi started, not unable to see the cute sad expression on Luffy's face. He looked so cute that she didn't even want to see what she would look like in her 40s, if it meant Luffy's happy. Let him throw the tantrum. It's his punishment to go last, isn't it, Lu-chan? Ace cooed at Luffy, making him huff with his tiny arms crossed over his chest. Meanie, Luffy uttered, going towards Kuma, who always has some candies with him. Does Uncle Kuma has candies? Luffy asked with his big puppy eyes, tugging at Kuma's jeans to gain attention. Don't, Ace started, but he knew it was an useless attempt when Kuma crouched down to Luffy's height. Here you go, Luffy. Kuma smiled softly as he magically brought forth Luffy's favorite candies in his big hand. Uncle Kuma's the best. Luffy squealed happily, grabbing the candies with his little hands and poking his tongue to Ace. I feel sad to know that you guys have to handle a kid high on sugar. Sabo chuckled to the Straw Hats and Ace's failed attempt. He is always like a little kid. Zoro provided with a shrug as he saw Luffy climb up on Kuma's shoulders and sit there while bouncing himself every second. At least there was a happy grin on his face as he enjoyed his treat. So you ready to see yourself? Nami nudged Vivi, who nervously walked forward to Bonnie. Vivi nodded in affirmative as Bonnie gave her a smile. XCTNIC 9K. You look so elegant and beautiful, Vivi Swan, Sanji shouted the instant Vivi grew up to her 40s, still looking as charming as she was right now. Sanji's nose let out blood at the sight of her bouncy, curvy. Keep your eyes off, pervert. Zoro bonked Sanji's head, making him fall face first on the deck, muttering about heaven. Zoro sighed, knowing Sanji would never change. Your hair's so shiny, Vivi, Chopper commented with his mouth open. Is it because you are the princess of Arabasta? Nami thought out loud, studying Vivi closer, only for her to back away a bit nervously. I don't know, Nami. Vivi spoke, feeling authoritative for the first time, making her wonder what she would be doing at her 40s. Would she be already handling the kingdom, or sailing the seas? What am I thinking? Me next, me. Luffy raised both of his arms atop Kuma's head. Sabo is left. Lu, Ace chimed in with a teasing smirk, making Luffy pout once again. Yeah, Bonnie agreed with Ace as she hoped to Sabo and without asking used her powers on him. XXFBCHR. Whoa. You look like a leader. Sabo, Ace smirked, seeing Sabo's posture grew commanding and more mature than it looked right now. I'll have more muscles than you both combined. Luffy pouted, puffing his cheeks, as he saw even Sabo gets a well-defined muscular build with broad shoulders and expanded chest. Dream on, baby brother. Ace teased Luffy further while Sabo just laughed lightly. I'll always be more muscular than you. I bet you would already be the leader of the army by your 40s, Bonnie grinned wide, admiring Sabo's longer, shiny blonde hair which fell over his shoulder. By then hopefully, the world would be at peace. Sabo thought out loud with a light smile. By our 40s, we would have already fond our dreams. Zoro spoke with his eyes closed. It was nice to know that by the time they all grew old and weary they would have already experienced a lot and have lots of tales to reminisce. Yeah, by then I'll be the king of pirates. She. Luffy shouted out with his childish glee but with large amount of conviction hidden behind it. You sure will. None of the Straw Hats or Luffy's family doubted about the words spoken by Luffy as he jumped off from Kuma's head and landed on the deck with his signature laughter. If there was anyone who deserved the title or can do, then it was Luffy for sure. You turn now. Bonnie spoke, placing a hand on Luffy's small head and looking straight into the bright sparkling eyes, which stared back with excitement at her. She felt guilty for keeping him waiting, but the wait was worth it. You'll be the cool old man like you wanted, Nichan. Excitement was evident in the deck of the Going Merry as Bonnie finally used her powers on Luffy to make him look that in his 40s. Luffy started growing up from his 5-year-old to back to his normal form. The baby fat in his cheeks began to vanish and a more pronounced jawline showed up. Luffy's a bit big shirt finally looked as if it belonged to him as he started growing up. Even his abs were getting more defined, but then Luffy suddenly stopped aging. It was as if time itself intervened or stopped. Luffy will never change. Usopp was the first one to compliment with a sigh, seeing Luffy look so youthful and energetic even as a grown-up man. Hell, the teen looked no older than 23 or 25 at most. I bet people will still be confused with your age when you are grown up. Zoro laughed with a smile on his already normal face. He wondered if Luffy looked in his 20s because he was a god. Luffy cocked his head to a side at confusion as he heard the compliments and then saw his own reflection in the water splashed on the deck. He really looked younger than he ought to be, but it didn't bother him at all. After all, he had prominent abs and more muscles than his lanky body did right now. I got muscles. Woohoo! Luffy cheered happily, hopping on the deck like an overgrown child in an adult body. Still not even comparable to Usopp. Ace teased Luffy jokingly, making the said teen pout and retort at his oldest brother. "Hey, Bonnie," Sabo whispered to Bonnie, seeing her confused expression. He himself had a question for his little sister. "What age did you go for, Lou?" "He wanted to be an old man, that's why I targeted for 55. Bonnie answered in a low voice, keeping her eyes trained on Luffy as she heard the other Straw Hats compliment him for his youthfulness. "Age him further, discreetly though," Sabo provided in a low voice. Sabo had his doubts since the beginning. He had chalked it to Luffy being a slow grower, but seeing it been half proven now was something else for him. Bonnie tried to increase Luffy's age once again, but nothing happened. Not a single age was added to his physique. He just looked young, as if he is struck in his 20s for forever. Bonnie increased the digits continuously on Luffy, hoping that at some point something would happen. But it was of no use. "It didn't work?" Sabo asked when Bonnie looked at Luffy with wide confused eyes and then nodded to his question. It was all the confirmation he needed. Something was either wrong with Luffy or his powers were automatically declining Bonnie's powers. With Luffy not aging a bit, it felt like time has no control on him. Sabo wondered if Luffy knew what was going on with him. He wanted to know because there was just a bad ominous feeling which he was feeling regarding Luffy. Something was going to be wrong sooner or later, and Sabo hated to feel that way. Smoker sat on a rock facing away from the port city of Nanohana to the ocean before him. He was angry that he wasn't able to capture Straw Hat nor the Big Shot's pirate captain and the revolutionary. He hated how in front of him that kid just vanished with the revolutionary tyrant, and Fire Fist raised a wall of fire stopping him and his subordinates from going after them or seeing which direction they were going. "Captain Smoker, forgive me for unable to do anything." Tashigi looked down ashamed. She had chased after the Straw Hat pirates only for her glasses to get knocked out in the commotion, rendering her slightly blind to the situation. When she got her specs, she tried to search for the crew of Straw Hat, for the pirate hunter, only to come out empty-handed. Smoker tsked, not minding Tashigi for he himself had fallen unconscious when there was a serious conversation about to start. He couldn't forget the sudden shiver he felt in the bar before falling down. He can't even tell what had happened there anymore, except that somehow Straw Hat Luffy, Fire Fist Ace, Bartholomew Kuma and the other two individuals were related, but that didn't stop Fire Fist and that girl to chase after Straw Hat as if they were plotting his murder. Was it a sibling squabble? But that intense? What even happened when he fell unconscious, and who did that? Not to mention, on top of all the commotion, Smoker saw the missing princess of Arabasta with the Straw Hats. On top of them, Smoker saw Princess Vivi. The snippets of the call which he had heard resonated in his mind, confusing him further of what was going on in the kingdom. Mr. Zero. Straw Hats. Princess Vivi. 3 C's. Deal. "Do you want to know who I saw with them?" Smoker asked, looking at the ocean with his normal stoic face. "Vivi, and I'm certain that it was her too." "Vivi? As in Princess Nefertari Vivi? What would she be doing with the Straw Hat pirates?" Tashigi questioned to Smoker, before getting an idea of what must be happening. "She must be their hostage. They probably abducted her in the hopes that her father would pay a hefty ransom." "I don't think so. She didn't look like a kidnapped victim but more like a part of the crew," Smoker uttered, remembering the princess talk with the other crew members on her own, carrying supplies without anyone's commands. Moreover, the Straw Hat crew even treated her like a friend. He doubted that the kid would kidnap anyone though, but he didn't trust the other pirates who were with him. "She was acting like a pirate?" Tashigi questioned in disbelief, making Smoker nod his head gruffly. Something very strange is happening here and I wish I knew what it was. Smoker gritted the butt of his cigars irritatedly. He hated to stay in dark. Captain Smoker. One of Smoker's subordinates came running in. He took his position and saluted Smoker, who wasn't even looking at him. We just got news that Mr. 11 was killed on the ship while we were busy searching for Straw Hats. Smoker tsked. Mr. 11 wasn't of any use to them, so he didn't mind the loss at all. He was probably some low-ranking agent from that mysterious criminal organization, and if he was thinking right, then that agent was killed by his own co-workers, which means the secret organization had at least its base or headquarters in Arabasta. Call off the search for Straw Hat. I'm pretty sure where he is headed. Smoker got up from the rock, remembering the only answer which he got the kid to answer to him in the goose chase. Straw Hat is after Crocodile. I'm sure of it. Crocodile will lead us right to him. Straw Hat will show up wherever he is, and I am sure if we find out what's going on when we get there, there will be no escape for him. Not this time. He won't let go until all his answers are answered and he gets the kid to stop. Why Crocodile? He's one of the 7 warlords of the sea, a pirate, even the government approval. Tashigi spoke, not understanding why the kid would even dream about going after Crocodile. I find all the 7 warlords despicable, but I find Crocodile's the absolute worst, Smoker uttered with disgust showing on his face. Politically speaking, isn't he the ally of the world government and the Marines? Tashigi questioned, not getting her captain's disdain for the warlord. Crocodile might have the powers to operate on his own, but the world government is delusional to think that giving him a sanction will make him obey. He's a pirate. Smoker provided, giving his opinion on that man. There's one thing you always need to remember, Tashigi, a pirate is a pirate. No matter where they go, they never change. The hot weather of the sandy lands of Arabasta wasn't a bother to the merry band of pirates heading for their destination with the resolve of crushing the evil's plans of one of the 7 warlords of the seas, sanctioned by the world government itself, Sir Crocodile. The joyous and giddy scene on the deck, filled with peals of laughter and silly songs, would make one assume that there was no tension in anyone's mind, and it was indeed true for a princess going to free her country and her father from the evil grasps of a sandman. Vivi wasn't afraid anymore. She trusted Luffy and her friends, and her resolve and belief only strengthened more and more with the presence of the supernova Fire Fist Ace, one of the co-founders and chief of staff of Revolutionary Army, Kuma and Sabo. She is really grateful that even the Revolutionary Army is willing to help her stop the civil war. Vivi stood near the railing as she observed the friendly banter going between Zoro and Sanji regarding clothes. She noted how Luffy came out from the men's cabin after changing his outfit to suit that of the temperature and climate of Arabasta. She heard the Ai and Bonnie, who were making each other's hair. She smiled as Ace and Sabo arm wrestled and Chopper and Usopp cheered on them. It all felt too surreal to her. She would have never thought that she would ever come this far. Not alone. A smile made its way to her face when she saw how Luffy jumped in the fight between his brother, wanting to get involved, only to get defeated and pout like a child. It was relaxing somehow to her palpitating heart, which was constantly worrying about her kingdom's innocent people. Vivi, come on. Join us. Nami beckoned at her, making her nod. Everything was all right. They had their plans, and soon everything will be back to normal in her country. No civil war. No misconception. No deaths. They were even closer to their destination, the Green City, Aramalu. Vivi couldn't help but remember the discussion she had with the Revs in the kitchen. After she had told them the entire story of how everything started, she had thought that they wouldn't trust her and support the rebel army, but fortunately they stayed steady by her side, listening to everything she had to tell. At first, she was unsure, but her trust grew on them when they told they wanted to help. Chapter 37. The Voyage of Sunlit Sand. Chapter contains spoilers of Chapter 1097 and 1098 of One Piece. Read at your own risk. We are finally here. Luffy grinned wide as he rushed to the railing of the Going Merry to see the shore, which they were heading to at a fast rate. Wow, so we are going into the desert. Does anyone know how hot it gets? Chopper questioned with eyes shining at the new terrain which greeted him. Beside him, Bonnie was also jumping up and down in excitement at the land which she can finally see. The land where the sun shines the brightest. It's normally over 100 degrees at the daytime. Sabo answered with a smile, seeing the excitement of the 3 youngest ones on board. "What? Please tell me you are joking," Chopper yelped in fear. He didn't want to feel that hot. "This is the land where the sun shines the brightest." Bonnie spoke in awe, not at all bothered by the heat which was already starting to make its presence. In fact, she was really happy to finally feel the rays of sun on her skin. "But at night time, it's super cold," Luffy added, to assure Chopper. He had been to some deserts with his brothers and he was really excited to see this one too with them. "You like deserts, Bonnie?" Nami asked as she came out of the women's cabin, wearing a long white gown over the dancer's dress which Sanji had bought for her. "Yeah, it's where the sun god most often gives his blessings," Bonnie chimed in with a happy giggle, making several eyes snap to her. Usopp was confused not knowing about the god and Chopper felt like he should know about them while Zoro's eyes narrowed a bit, wondering if Bonnie knew something. If someone would have noticed Luffy, then they could have clearly seen him flinching at Bonnie's answer. "The Sanji, ah, Nami, what happened? Where's your dancer outfit?" Sanji interrupted Usopp and Chopper at once, with his eyes bulging out of his sockets at the sight of Nami and even Vivi covering up their bodies and not wearing the outfits which he picked up. "Ag. Vivi, you too? Why are you wearing that?" "Because any exposed skin will get sunburned. You have to cover up in the desert," Vivi answered with a polite smile, as she passed one Arabasta costume to Luffy, who happily wore the red costume on. "But those outfits were too sxy," Sanji whined in the corner of the ship, pathetically. Meanwhile, Usopp and Zoro made their way to the anchor of the ship as they had finally arrived at the shore from where they would be headed to their destination, Yuba. But before Zoro could drop it, moving dots appeared in the ocean and one by one several small sea creatures erupted on the surface. "Sea turtles?" Zoro questioned. "Kung Fu Dugongs," Vivi shrieked in panic. "If you want to come then you will have to beat me first, but I doubt that will happen, you bunch of cowards," he says. Chopper repeated what the sea turtle spoke so animatedly while blocking the shore. "Hey, nobody calls me a coward and gets away with it," Usopp proudly announced as he stood on the railing. "Here comes me," Usopp proclaimed, jumping off the ship despite Vivi's warning to not. Only to be dealt by a single Kung Fu Dugong in seconds. "Kung Fu Dugongs are really strong," Vivi worriedly provided as Usopp laid with a swollen face on the shore. "Luffy, no you don't," Ace suddenly spoke up, seeing Luffy jump off from the ship. He really didn't want. "Are you okay there?" Luffy asked the sea turtle after he had landed a punch on the sea turtle. "That's bad," Ace sighed, wondering if the turtle would even wake up. Him having a concussion would be the least of their worries for the poor sea creature. Hopefully, Luffy had learnt to restrain his strength at least a little bit. "Why is it bad?" Bonnie asked, confusion written all over her face, as she tugged her daddy's long outfit, not understanding what was wrong in defeating the turtles. "Because it's their rule that if they lose in one of their matches then they become the winner's pupil," Kuma replied to his daughter with a soft smile, but he wondered if this rule even applied to Luffy, and he was proven correct when all the Kung Fu Dugongs started to gather around the little Kami with sparkling eyes filled with adoration and respect. "I hope Luffy doesn't bring them to the desert," Ace sighed, feeling relieved at the sight of the beaten-up turtle getting up. He jumped off the ship followed by the other as he was going to stay with Luffy for the journey, and hopefully at the end of it he would have a little vacation in the location of Blackbeard. "Luffy won't endanger their lives," Sabo tried to assure Ace as he jumped after him. "They think he is his master now." Vivi rubbed her temples, as she witnessed the sight of Luffy showing the group how to throw a punch correctly. "Don't you think he's teaching them hockey indirectly?" Zoro spoke with a sweat drop as he heard Luffy speak to the turtles about punching the rocks and dodging the others' attacks. "That's Luffy for ya." Sanji agreed with Zoro and took out a cigarette for himself whose tip caught fire. "Thanks, Ace." Sanji thanked the one who did it, getting a smile in return. "I'll be going to Yuba now," Kuma declared to Sabo and Vivi, who nodded in return. They had planned that someone would go ahead and scout the situation in Yuba. It wouldn't do much good but for sure would help them to track the location and get more information about the rebel army. Vivi gave a weak smile to Kuma and nodded. "We just need Koza and then things will be okay. I'll talk him out of this," Vivi assured him with determination. She was going to stop him by showing what's really happening. "Ace, Sabo," Kuma spoke, gathering the attention of the two older brothers, who were watching Luffy and Bonnie goofing around with the Kung Fu Dugongs. "I trust Bonnie to you guys. We will take care of her," Sabo answered, with Ace agreeing with him. With that done, Kuma vanished, heading to Yuba. "Let's get going too." Nami spoke as she stood beside Vivi, seeing the girl ball her fists in determination to stop the rebel army. Luffy heard Nami's words and turned to the Kung Fu Dugongs who had made a neat line just after him, hearing that they were ready to leave. "Luffy, you aren't bringing them with us." Sanji spoke first, with his eyes twitching at the number of Kung Fu Dugongs before Luffy could speak. Luffy wanted to bring the little ones with him, but he knew the cruel temperature of the desert, which was not something the sea turtles can stand. Moreover, he doesn't know if there will be enough food and water for everyone. "I'm sorry, but I can't take you guys with me." Luffy spoke softly, as he crouched to them. "It would be best for them to stay in the waters." "Why can't we, Mi-chan? Let's take them with us, pretty please," Bonnie pleaded with wobbly lips. She really liked the cute creatures she was playing with just now. "They are water creatures, Bonnie. They won't make it," Sabo explained to Bonnie softly, seeing that Luffy already knew that. He was proud of Luffy for not giving in to his whims. The Kung Fu Dugongs held onto Luffy's legs and hands, not willing to let him go. Some even latched onto Bonnie, pleading with her to help them in their request. The sight was so cute that Vivi and Nami began to sweat nervously, not having the guts or heart to tell Luffy or Bonnie or the Dugongs to leave them. "I promise we will meet once again." Luffy gave the Dugongs a bright sunny smile, but it didn't help as the Dugongs really didn't want to leave, wanting to go wherever Luffy will. "How about this?" Chopper asked, rummaging through a bag and getting food out of it. "You guys can have this, if you don't follow us." Chopper provided, with Luffy nodding, which led to the Dugongs to jump at Chopper and agree with them. Soon, the food was given to all of them, which finally made them willing to leave with tears in their eyes and food in their mouth or hands. "I honestly don't know what we would have done if Chopper hadn't persuaded them to stay," Nami spoke as they finally headed out, away from turtles. "Yeah, they kept saying, 'Where you go, we will follow you, Master.' If we wouldn't have given them food, they would have not left at all." Chopper spoke, feeling proud of helping his friends. "Now, our food supplies have gone a lot smaller. Thanks Luffy, thanks," Sanji angrily commented with a tick mark on his head. He wasn't truly too angry, but the fact that someone might starve in his presence made him feel bad. "He is a handful," Ace shrugged, well known with Luffy's antics. Luffy just brushed off Sanji's angry remarks, knowing his reasons very well. They will soon reach Yuba, where they can restock their supplies, so he wasn't seeing what the deal was. Above all of this, his attention was on something else, which they were approaching. The painful howls of the winds which were calling him and guiding to the direction which they were headed, had Luffy slightly on edge. He didn't know what sight would greet him, but he knew it wouldn't be something which he would like. He was correct when the sight of crumbling houses, barren trees and land with no signs of an alive person greeted him, making him stand still. "What happened, Luffy?" Sabo questioned, seeing Luffy's tense shoulders and him stopping abruptly. Luffy was walking ahead of them, hence they were not able to see what he was. "This is Yuba?" Luffy questioned, his heart sinking at the sight before him. He felt the others soon catching up to him, making him shadow his eyes with his straw hat. The cries and echoes of the broken, thirsty and wallowing souls resounded in the very atmosphere for Luffy to hear, begging for water and food. "No, this isn't Yuba," Vivi informed, her eyes dropping with sadness at the sight she was witnessing. "This is Aramalu. It was known far and wide as the City of Green." "It was green?" Usopp repeated with confused eyes as not a single green thing appeared in his vision. "Take a good look, everyone. This is what Baroque Works has been doing to my country. The people of Arabasta, this is what they had to go through." Vivi spoke in a sad tune and started walking ahead, leading the group through the broken city. "There's nothing here," Bonnie sadly proclaimed with her eyes wide. She tugged onto Luffy's hand as he didn't move, making him give her a smile and start walking once again, but at the end of the group. "No, it's nothing but a ghost town now," Vivi clarified to Bonnie as they walked past the breaking walls. She really can't believe what had happened here, knowing firsthand what it used to be before. But up until a few short years ago, it was a thriving city full of gardens, poultries, and greeneries. She spoke with a heavy heart. This place? Nami commented with disbelief. Yes. Vivi nodded her head sadly. Rain has always been scarce here, but by saving every last drop of water and using it wisely, the people were able to make the city flourish, but unfortunately it stopped when the rain did. Not a single drop of water has fallen in any part of this country for 3 years now. 3 years? Sanji spoke in astonishment. He never thought that there would be some place like this where rain had not blessed the lands. Wait, even without rain, isn't the river another water source? Zoro questioned Vivi, not getting why the people didn't use that. And it's closed too. Why couldn't they just pipe the water from over there? Usopp added to Zoro's question, pointing to the river where their ship was docked at. The ocean had driven it inland. Luffy mumbled, looking at the ground. His throat felt coarse and rough. He didn't want to face what was ahead of him right now. It was only making him remember the dream where he went to experience freedom, which led innocent people to die out of starvation and thirst. The answer to that is just up ahead. Vivi answered, as no one could hear what Luffy even tried to mumble out. Even though it's a desert kingdom, never in thousands of years of Arabasta's history has the rain ever stopped completely. Vivi continued walking, leading the group to the place which was the main source of people either abandoning the town or dying in it. But there was a place in the country where the rain fell more than usual. Arabasta, the capital, where the king's palace is located. People called it the king's miracle. At least they did until one particular day. With that, Vivi started informing the group about the day where her father was framed of a crime which he never committed. The day where a cargo cart tumbled over and the items in it scattered on the ground. The whole cargo was filled with a green powder, the powder also known as the dance powder. The men who were supposed to make the delivery blamed the king before the civilians, saying they didn't recognize the powder and were just following the king's orders. This led to people's trust on the king to shatter. Dance powder? Nami repeated with a contemplated look on her face. It was all making sense now to her. You heard of it? Chopper asked, indirectly asking what it was. Yes, I sure have. It summons rain. Nami answered, making Luffy's attention snap to her. He couldn't believe something else could also summon rain like him. After all, the sky was under one of his siblings' domains, but he hadn't heard from him since he remembers. What happened to you? When was the last time you responded to me, Ni-chan? Luffy thought sadly, looking at the sky. Maybe his older brother was angry with him for something he did but couldn't remember. But that didn't explain why his other siblings and mother would react the way they still do whenever he calls for him. Moreover, how does he have control over the weather, storms and rain, ever since he was a kid, when those had never been under his domains? A powder can do that. Luffy wasn't expecting any answers from his siblings or mother, so he turned towards Nami, who would actually have an answer to his questions. Nami nodded grimly as she started to explain how a researcher in a country invented it as it never rained where he lived. This caused Luffy to feel angry for a moment before realizing that the country never got rain, which led to desperate measures. But isn't it perfect for a desert country like this? Usopp questioned, not getting why the use of dance powder would ever lead the king to be framed and a war to start. No, it has to have some negative effects. Luffy answered with a serious look, causing Ace and Sabo to share a look. They didn't know what was causing Luffy to get serious or angry. Just like Luffy said, the town that produced the dance powder was happy enough to dance as it got lots of rain. But it led to the rest of the country to suffer from drought. Sabo answered with a straight face this time. He was getting worried seeing Luffy's uncanny mood. Hey, Lu? You okay? Ace whispered as he walked slowly to keep pace with Luffy, who was moving like a lifeless doll. It was really bothering him. Want me to carry you? Luffy shook his head slowly, tuning out the explanation of how dance powder works. He was already avoiding looking at the crumbling houses as the lifeless corpses just swam in his vision. The least he could do was walk on the land that seemed to have been abandoned by the gods. A part of him wondered if him running away from his duties and giving up his powers had something to do with it. But why wasn't the god of rain, his favorite brother, Halid, blessing this land? Even after seeing the thirsty and needy people? He knows that he might be angry at him, seeing him not responding to him anytime, but his brother wasn't ever this merciless to leave the innocents this way. What was even going on? Luffy bumped into Zoro, who had stopped in his way. What happened? Luffy frowned as he noticed everyone had halted in their path and were looking ahead at an uneven road. He failed to notice the worried glances which Ace, Sabo and Zoro gave him at that moment. This used to be a fresh canal that used to pipe in fresh water from the Sandora River until someone destroyed it. Vivi explained, making Luffy's eyes widen, and he finally understood Null also became one of the reasons for why people abandoned the once beautiful city. Now do you see what happened? With its canal gone, the city of Green lost its only remaining source of fresh water. People here waited and prayed, but sadly rain never came. Luffy shaded his eyes with his straw hat, feeling a mix of sadness, worry and anger at the gods for not answering the pleas of the innocent people, but he knew better than to have hope in them, especially when they had long since stopped interfering with mortals, unlike he still does. Moreover, with people abusing the technology to create artificial rain, it must not have sat well with the gods, but that shouldn't have led them to abandon the innocent people in this dire state. Luffy clenched his fists when his silent pleas went unheard by Halid once again, just like always. Something like that and the dance powder had to make the people distrust their king. Sabo grimaced, getting the picturesque proof of Vivi's explanation of what was happening in the country. Vivi nodded sadly at Sabo's words. With no more water, fighting broke out here. To escape the violence, the exhausted citizens abandoned the city and left in search of the other oasis, leading the city of Green to wither away. Vivi finished explaining the complete situation of Aramula and giving an overview of what's happening in other cities and towns of Arabasta. The wind picked up, carrying the molten gold sand with it, twirling it in the hot air, as it rushed toward the group traveling through the city, compelling them to halt at their path. It almost seemed like the winds wanted some reassurance as they wailed mournfully, conveying about their loneliness and trauma, tales of war and hardship, the stench of blood and death, to anyone who could hear, or rather to a specific person whom the wind seemed to caress, begging for justice. "What is that?" Nami asked, taking an involuntary step back in fear. The howling of the wind seemed like cries of ghosts echoing throughout the city. "Is that the rebel army?" Chopper questioned, holding the straps of his bag tightly for reassurance. "Are there more of those Baroque work creeps waiting for us?" Usopp shuddered a bit, looking at each direction where the wind's cries were resounding. "It's the wind," Luffy answered in a low voice, but miraculously his voice was heard above all the howling and wallowing cries of the gales which were rapidly moving towards them, especially after hearing Luffy's voice. "It's the wind," Bonnie repeated, as her hold on Sabo's cloak lessened. It was her first time witnessing such a spectacular sound and sight. "It sounds like a voice." "Luffy, it's coming from all directions. This isn't good. What are we gonna do?" Usopp panicked, fearing the swirling hurricane of sand which was threatening to engulf him whole. "Don't worry, Usopp. They are just mourning." Luffy spoke sadly as the hurricane finally engulfed them all, making them instantly close their eyes to prevent sand from getting in, except for Luffy, who found that even in the midst of the hurricane nothing pricked or made him feel uncomfortable. He felt like the winds were welcoming him, pleading him to do something to stop the injustice that had been done to them. It made him almost feel like the distant memories of stealing some time to play with Halid. Luffy's pleasant memories were abruptly cut off when he saw a silhouette of a hand. Instantly his mind thought it was Halid, but he recognized his favorite big brother too well. Anger welled within Luffy as he understood what was happening. He was about to run after the person who was behind the ruin of the Green City. He was about to declare war on them, but before he could do anything, he heard the flapping of a cape. Despite not feeling any haki coming from it, Luffy rushed towards the person, hoping against all hope that the person was okay. "Someone's collapsed," Nami voiced out, seeing the direction at which Luffy was running to, where a fallen man's cape was fluttering furiously in the windy abandoned city. "There's someone still here," Vivi spoke, rushing towards Luffy, who had made an abrupt halt. The sight of the crashed human, who was reduced to nothing but bones, made Luffy screech to a halt and step back in panic. The skull peeking out from beneath the cape made Luffy's past nightmares flood back to him. He didn't register Vivi standing before him and falling to her knees. He didn't notice the warm, reassuring hand that silently grounded him in his place, stopping him from going into a full-blown panic attack. Hell, he even barely noticed his head hitting a strong chest, hearing the steady beats of a thrumming heart which was trying to make its way through the nightmare which he had caused in his past just to have some fun. The barren lands, the scorching heat, The dried-up trees and the howling winds were already making him walk on a land which he had once created unknowingly, but the sight of the skeleton was the last nail which had teleported his mind back to the place where his father was shouting at him, reminding him of the duties that he failed to perform. "You are not there." A soft, familiar voice traveled in his ear, stopping his drumming heart from going crazy or his mind to be struck at the past. When he was able to calm down, he finally recognized the voice as Sabo's and the hand grounding him as Ace's. He even heard Vivi's cries as she continued to wail about what had happened and was happening in her country. "What did my father, or all the other good people ever do to deserve this? It's hard enough to live in a desert every day, but somehow the people of Arabasta found a way to do it and led happy lives, but Crocodile destroyed those lives. What gives him the right to do that?" Vivi cried, her voice cracking with tears welling up in her eyes as she picked up the skull in her own shaking hands. All the while, as one of the 7 warlords, he passes himself as the hero of the people. No one knows what he is really doing. No one realizes that he is actually deceiving the entire country as they cheer him on. Vivi trembled, her voice increasing with each word she uttered. Her body racked with silent sobs at the desperation and sorrow of the people who died or lost their homes as a collateral of what Crocodile did. The sound of a building falling to the ground resounded where only the winds dared to howl in agony, making Vivi, who was crying, lift her head to the side to witness the sight of Sanji and Usopp fuming in anger, which got unleashed on a poor abandoned house. Even Zoro, who was usually calm, had his hands on the hilt of his katana, his eyes sharp and shimmering with unsaid anger. The cackles of fire burning to life snapped Vivi's attention towards Ace, whose body was consumed in fire, and a single flick of his fist had demolished an entire line of houses, making them fall to the sandy grounds. She would have been afraid if not for the concentrated fury brewing within the eyes of the fireman. She was awed at the very display, making her chew on her lips to stop her crying and witness the anger everyone was feeling inside their heart for her people. Ace, however, flinched suddenly at the fear which flickered in Chopper's eyes and the concerned look which Sabo gave him. He had done countless missions while being in the Revolutionary Army. At the beginning, when their missions involved freeing slaves from the clutches of the Celestial Bastards, he would get always angry at the pain the motherfuckers had inflicted on the innocents, but after some years of getting a better control on his anger, he had learnt to not take out his anger on someone or something else than the one who was the cause of it. But his current actions spoke otherwise. "You are a monster." Ace remembered those cruel words being thrown at him on the Moby. The sting of the fact, which he always knew somewhere deep within his heart, never left him alone, and now that he stood among his brother's crew and showcased his monstrous powers, he feared that they might even call him a monster one day. SG in with his Luffy had almost went into a panic attack seeing the corpse Vivi was holding. But witnessing Ace flinch and lose control of his fire was even more distressing. The way Ace's trembling hands reached for his shorts to pull out a sea stone ring which he slipped onto one of his fingers, was making Sabo feel nervous and on edge with Ace's behavior. He had thought that his brother was coping better after their earlier conversation, but it was clear that a part of Ace was still deeply affected by what had happened. Sabo gritted his teeth in anger at Crocodile and the Whitebeard pirates. If he ever comes across any one of them, they would better pray that it was Luffy who got to them first. Meanwhile, Luffy's fists were clenched tightly at his sides, his knuckles turning white as his panic turned into anger. Anger on Crocodile for tormenting all the innocents, only for getting his hands on that, which wasn't even in this country to begin with. He gritted his teeth as the fury inside him became uncontrollable. He got out of Sabo's embrace, telling him a silent thank you, but the force at which he did was enough to create a hole in the very sand which he was standing on. The ground trembled, hidden with the sounds of the begging winds which zoomed past and through them. "Let's get moving." Luffy spoke determinedly as he noticed Vivi burying the skull with the help of Nami and Bonnie, who were visibly upset at the predicament the country was going through. "I'm itching to kick Crocodile's ass," Luffy announced, his hands twitching at his side to punch the hell out of Crocodile. Vivi wiped her remaining tears and stood up with Nami and Bonnie. She nodded determinedly as everyone gathered around her with serious faces. At that moment, Vivi felt immense gratitude towards the group which had given her a hand in the mission which she had set to, all alone in the beginning. "Let's go to Yuba," Luffy announced, taking the lead. In the midst of all of this, no one noticed the water which started to bubble out of the very hole which Luffy created out of his anger. The sound of a lighter flicking and the deep inhale of smoke, which flitted through the fat cigar, held between the sharp teeth of Crocodile, echoed in the one of the silent rooms in Rainbase, which was highly protected and impenetrable by anyone. The sounds of heels clicking on the ground was soon followed by the sliding of the curtains across a long, wide window, allowing the sunlight to peek into the room. "Did you verify what I asked you to?" Crocodile's sharp and stoic voice broke the silence which was engulfing the entire room. "Of course, I verified it through the 50 billions which were stationed at Nanohana. They reported numerous broken ships floating a bit far from the port as well as the missing frontier agents and the other subordinates led by Mr. Six and Miss Mother's Day." A calm voice made its presence known inside the dimly lit room. It belonged to none other than the partner of Crocodile, Miss All Sunday, or rather known as Nico Robin by the world government. "So, not only Mr. Six lied to me about defeating the Three Seas but also had the audacity to state that the Straw Hat Pirates, a freaking rookie group of pirates, managed to escape from the clutches of Three Seas?" Crocodile growled as he turned to face Robin, his face contorting with immense anger as he gritted his teeth, snapping his cigar in two. His rage was further fueled by both his fear and the rare occurrence of someone escaping from the clutches of one of the Three Seas. How had the Straw Hat Pirates managed to escape? Crocodile would have loved to ponder on it, to make a plan to escape from their wrath, considering the threat he had personally received from Syra, but he doesn't have time for that. "It looks like that, Mr. Zero." Robin spoke, her hands deep inside her long coat, where she fiddled with the eternal pose which Straw Hat Luffy provided her. For the first time in her knowledge, Robin couldn't tell what was actually happening behind the scenes. "How many people do we still have at our side?" Crocodile asked after calming down from his anger with which he was hiding his fear. After all, the Three Seas aren't some low-key pirates. They're people who are feared and known wide throughout the Grand Line as well as the Blues. "We currently have 50 stationed at Nanohana and 125 men scattered throughout the country but mainly concentrated near or in Kotoria," Robin answered, keeping her expression as calm as possible. "As for the officer agents, they'll all be meeting at 8 at Spider's Cafe tonight." Crocodile turned back to the window, from where he could see the bustling town. He had wanted to send the officer agents to confront the Three Seas but he needed them near him to protect his plan. He needed the strongest at his disposal, even though he knows that even they hold no match towards even one of the Three Seas. Crocodile didn't know what he could do right now, except striking a deal with the Three Seas, but his plan was at its last phase and he didn't want them to get involved in it and gain more power than they already hold to scare the entirety of the globe. He had almost rang to the world government requesting for backup to deal with the Three Seas, but he knew those sniffling dogs would have sniffed him out too. That's why he refused to dig out his grave too. "The plan's set to commence soon," Crocodile declared, steeling himself. He couldn't afford to waste any more time. Who knows where the Three Seas were at the moment? If they were lurking in Rainbase or not, ready to strike, he knew he was getting paranoid due to it, but what else could he do? Tell them about his plan and hope that they would let him live? Even to him it sounded like a fake reassurance. If he, even by mistake, utters anything about his plan, he might even lose the weapon as well as his life. Reinforce the base. No one is allowed to enter the city or the headquarters without proper identification and a thorough bag check. Understood? Understood. Robin repeated as she nervously left the room, scared because even Crocodile seemed to be frightened at the fact that Three Seas were truly in Arabasta. The harsh glare of the unforgiving sun beat down on the sandy desert island of Arabasta, casting shimmering waves of heat across the never-ending stretch of the sandy lands. The ragtag group of the pirates as well as the revolutionaries trudged on the scorching sands, heading northwest towards their destination, Yuba, the city where the rebel army was located, according to Vivi. Sounds of panting and dragging of footsteps could be heard as they traveled, wiping away the sweat that was drenching them and slowly sipping the scarce and precious water they were left with. Everyone was tired due to the harsh climate and the scorching heat of the sun, except for 3 people. The first was Luffy, who had withstood temperatures far greater than the one which he was presented with right now. The second was Ace, who despite wearing a sea stone ring on one of his fingers was shrugging off the heat as if it didn't exist in the first place. And the last was Vivi, who was born in the desert and had lived all her life under the intense and overwhelming heat of the sun. I thought that Luffy would be the first one to be tired. Usopp panted as he walked with the help of a stick on the sandy grounds. He regretted speaking as his throat begged for water the next second. "I can carry Chopper if you are tired, Luffy." Zoro spoke, stealing worried glances at Luffy, who was carrying Chopper on top of a barrel and his own backpack. He was concerned for his captain due to his unusual silence. Moreover, Luffy wasn't acting like himself at all. "I'm fine with the cold, but the heat's no good," Chopper panted, his ragged breathing showing the discomfort which he was feeling in the hot desert. "I am not tired, Zoro," Luffy answered with a small frown on his lips. He was carrying Chopper because holding him was comforting his heart and mind, and reassuring him that he wasn't really back in the past being shouted at by his father, or surrounded by the cruel stench of death cause of sunshine which had occurred in the first place due to him. The skull at Aramalu was making him feel guilty and remember that time over and over again. He knew that the present wasn't his fault but Crocodile's, yet that wasn't stopping him from feeling deeply sad and partly guilty due to the happenings occurring in Arabasta. There were also other things he couldn't help but question. His mother hadn't informed him anything about Ace since he entered the Grand Line. She hadn't told him that Ace was in danger or that he was off endangering his life on whim and getting beaten up by others just because he needed to feel pain. It was not like he hadn't tried to ask her in the midst of all the fun he was having on Mary. He had asked her, only for her to not respond to him. He even remembers the time when he was asking about Ace's whereabouts and well-being to his mother in Whiskey Peak, but she had distracted him by telling him another interesting story. It had worried him when the pattern continued, but he hadn't pressed on the issue, trusting that his mother would take care of Ace too. But now he wasn't sure what she was even doing. "Sanji, can we have lunch now?" Luffy questioned excitedly, distracting himself from the burdening thoughts, whose answers he knew deep down but refused to accept for the sake of his heart. "Sorry, Luffy." Sanji apologized, making sure to not look at the disheartened eyes which looked back at him at his answer. He didn't have the heart to say no to the weirdly acting teen. He wished he kept a small snack for Luffy, but he hadn't, in the hurry and all the fun. "We can't have lunch until Vivi says okay." "Vivi, let's have lunch already," Luffy insisted, not wanting to go back to the swirling thoughts. He hoped at least eating like always would make him lose in the bliss of the tasty food. "I'm sorry, Luffy, but we are only a quarter of the way to Yuba right now," Vivi explained sadly, not daring to look at the kicked puppy look which was displayed on Luffy's face. "But we can have a break and lunch at the next rock we come across. Okay?" Vivi added, seeing Luffy hiding his mopey face quickly by his straw hat. She was concerned with how Luffy was behaving too. "Till then, have some water, Luffy." Sabo offered the bottle of water to Luffy, who hadn't had any throughout the journey. "Thanks," Luffy mumbled, taking the bottle of water from Sabo, who was carrying an exhausted and sleepy Bonnie on his back. He took a gulp of water and returned it to Sabo. "I am surprised, to be honest." Ace started as he walked beside Sabo, who had the full details of what's happening in Arabasta. "I knew that Crocodile was here, but him trying to steal a kingdom and usurp the throne. That sounds like a bad joke." "Exactly. Pirates who become warlords often have an ulterior motive which they don't want the government to know. But what would be Crocodile's motive here in this country?" Sabo scowled at the end of his words. Seeing the situation in which the country is in was only making him confused on what Crocodile truly wished for. It didn't even look like he wanted the kingdom to rule, seeing how he had let people's houses and lives go down the drain. Ace nodded at Sabo's words. He knew full well that Crocodile was not doing this all to just make the people against the king, but there was something else which was brewing under it all. Something which Crocodile wanted, which can be achieved even if there is no person alive in the kingdom. But what is special in this kingdom for someone to go to this extreme length? Rock sighted at 12 o'clock. Usopp reported the instant he found a towering rock up ahead using his goggles, halting Ace's and Luffy's thoughts. "Really?" Luffy excitedly questioned, dismissing all his negative thoughts and looking at the direction which Usopp was zooming in through his goggles, and true to his words, there were rocks, which means food. "Break time!" Luffy whooped, running towards the rock at full speed, where he was also feeling some faint hockey signature. "Holy crap! He's fast!" Usopp shouted in shock at the sight of Luffy already having reached the rock, which looked like it would take at least 5 more minutes to reach for him. "That's Luffy for ya!" Sabo shrugged, increasing his pace. "Ace, how about a race?" Sabo smirked to his brother, who grinned back. The whole idea behind the race was to not let Luffy be alone in his uncanny mood. On the other side, Luffy dumped his backpack on the ground and placed the slightly sleepy Chopper on it. Finally, break time. Luffy grinned widely as he took onto the long shadow of the rock, which would suffice him and his friends for their little break. Go! Go! Sounds of panting and whimpering was heard by Luffy, making him look at the ground at the sight of several white birds sprawled on the scorching sand, begging for food and water, but aside that he also registered the malicious intent of the same birds whose attention seemed to not disrupt from his backpack and the barrel of water. We have injured birds here. We need a doctor. Chopper was the first one who reacted at the herons which were squeaking and twitching. He was about to rush towards them when Luffy's hand stopped him. Stop faking it. Luffy called out to the birds, his disappointment clearly heard in the tone he used. That was enough for the birds to stop their act and peek at Luffy with their wide eyes, not believing the one they had been found out by. How did you know they were faking it? Chopper asked with astonishment, clearly seeing the birds standing up and hearing them apologize to Luffy for their deceiving acts. Chopper belatedly wondered in the back of his mind if the birds felt the same respect he always feels towards his captain. Luffy didn't answer to Chopper as he scanned the birds, seeing their matted and dirty feathers. Behave well and you get food and water. Deal? Luffy asked the birds, who nodded and started crying at the sheer mercy they were being given despite their actions. Chopper, check them over for any injuries. Luffy requested the doctor of his crew, who nodded and quickly set on to work by opening his backpack which had his medical supplies. With that done, Luffy took a deep breath and shouted out to his friends. Guys, come quick. We have some injured birds. We gotta help them. By the time he completed his words, Ace, Sabo and Bonnie had already reached him, witnessing the sight of the herons in line and getting checked and bandaged by Chopper. The sight would have been confusing if not for Luffy's recent shout. Injured birds? Could it be? Vivi's eyes widened at the realization which she was coming at. No, Luffy. Wait. Those birds are known for tricking the passing travelers to steal their luggage for food and water. That had the remaining Straw Hats, who were walking at a leisurely rate, run at their top speed to the dumbass who, they thought, had probably already lost all his goodies, but when they reached there, to their surprise, most of the herons had been checked and bandaged and were obediently standing at a side. They are all fine except for being malnourished. Chopper reported after checking the last heron. He was unsure about checking them after hearing Vivi's yells, but Luffy's support and the heron's obedience made him confident enough to check over the poor desert creatures. They will try to trick us the moment we let our guards down. Vivi tried once again to stop Luffy as she was very familiar with the deceptive nature of the desert creatures, but she should have known that her persuasion wasn't going to work on Luffy of all people. Luffy's face softened at Chopper's report on the herons who were just onto deceiving people because they were hungry and thirsty. He couldn't even have the guts to blame them, seeing that the desert wasn't providing the herons enough food and water. So, without a word, Luffy pulled out food and water from his bag, which he kept for emergency while leaving the Mary, and provided it to the herons. As Luffy fed and watered the herons, Ace, Sabo and Bonnie exchanged notes in where Luffy's actions were coming from. Growing up in the Revolutionary Army base, going out on missions, freeing the slaves from the Celestial Bastards, seeing their famished self and what starvation could drive people or creatures to do, had made each of them understand the true value of food and water. Of how much difference a small piece of bread and a little water can make. However, the rest of the crew were truly shocked and confused. What the hell? Sanji uttered in surprise, his cigarette falling from his mouth at the sight of Luffy of all people offering his secretly stashed snacks and water to the herons who were lined up waiting for their chances with guilty and sorry faces. Sanji was confused on what he should be more shocked at. The fact that the herons were sorry for their deceiving acts, or the fact that Luffy had sneaked out some food. Luffy's feeding his snacks to them when he is himself hungry. Nami gasped, feeling astonished at the sight. It wasn't like she didn't have the pleasure of witnessing Luffy sharing his food with other creatures who he deemed to be hungry, but right now the situation didn't seem like it would have been best to share his own food with the herons. Yeah, but look how he is smiling right now. Usopp stated with a soft smile resting on his lips. He was getting concerned when Luffy hadn't interacted with anyone during the whole journey from Aramalu, except for carrying Chopper with him. Zoro remained silent, his eyes fixated at Luffy as he happily bid farewell to the herons who now revitalized, took off to the sky, cawing gratefully. Zoro couldn't help but wonder if Luffy's actions were somehow related to his divinity. The way Luffy can captivate any and all creatures, gain their respect and seemingly talk to them, understanding their situation and helping them. Was it because of his true nature as a god? The sun god Nika? Well, now that's done, let's have lunch too. Sanji sighed, after getting out of his initial shock. He could see that everyone was hungry by now, especially after running in the desert. Yeah, food. Luffy and Bonnie whopped excitedly as they rushed to Sanji, whose lips curled up to a smile. With the group finally getting lunch and a break from wandering in the desert, they chatted and laughed, forgetting about the oppressive heat. But as they rested and relaxed, no one noticed Luffy having slipped away, wandering in the hot desert as curiosity guided his feet. Luffy's desire to discover more desert creatures had led him away from the group, which only noticed the missing cherry presents when they heard distant rumbling of heavy footsteps rushing towards them. "Where's Luffy?" Nami asked instantly, noticing the absence of her captain. She saw the wide eyes of Ace, Sabo and Bonnie too, making her realize that even they didn't know where the little troublemaker ran off to. The sand under their feet started shaking violently as the rumbling grew louder and louder with each passing second. "What is happening?" Vivi questioned in panic. She had never heard of an earthquake occurring in a desert. "Guys! Look! It's a giant lizard and a camel." Luffy's voice echoed across the desert, making the group spot him running in front of the gigantic purple-colored lizard and a camel. "What the hell, Lu?" Ace exclaimed, his hand slipping out the sea stone ring from his finger and shoving it deep inside his pocket, making his flames come to life, ready to protect his troublesome little brother. "What is it this time?" Sanji questioned Luffy, whose giggles and laughter resounded with the thundering footsteps of the purple lizard which was racing towards them. "It's a Sandora monitor lizard," Vivi answered with wide eyes, seeing the reptile which was chasing after Luffy and the camel. Just what kind of star was he born to be fated to so much trouble? Zoro sighed, unsheathing his katana, ready to cut the damn thing which was chasing after them. "I think we are missing something," Sabo stated out aloud, stopping Ace from using his fire fist at the poor lizard who had the audacity of chasing their little brother. The peals of laughter from Luffy were solidifying his evidence of something being misunderstood by them. But what was it? "I got a lizard and camel friend." She. Zoro, Sanji and Ace fell on the scorching sandy land, dramatically, at the revelation of Luffy not getting chased but playing with the desert creatures he befriended, while the others had their jaws dropped in sheer disbelief. Luffy, once again, had done the unthinkable by befriending a carnivore reptile who would have likely had him and the camel for its lunch. Sanji sighed as Luffy finally came to a stop and introduced his new friends to them, animatedly. He was really surprised at Luffy's kindness which looked to be never-ending. He was a tiny bit sad that they had to feed the extra mouths too, but he fed them anyway. Luckily they still have some food rations for one more day and hopefully, in Yuba, they can restock their supplies. "What's with these creatures, Luffy?" Zoro questioned Luffy who was busy climbing the camel's back with Usopp joining in. "I wanted to explore the area and before I knew it I saw camel and lizard racing. It looked fun, so I joined in." Luffy answered gleefully, as he finally sat on the camel's back, with his legs swinging to and fro. "You do realize the lizard was trying to eat the camel?" Sabo asked with a sweat drop to Luffy, who gasped at the revelation. "Bad lizard. No eating friends. Got it?" Luffy spoke with a stern expression on his childish, baby face, which had the group trying to stifle their peals of laughter. The lizard, however, nodded its head furiously in response, happy enough that his little lord was willing to give him a second chance. "I won't try it again, little lord," he says. Chopper translated what the reptile answered. It would have raised certain questions right then if not for the camel kicking Usopp, who was trying to climb after Luffy, to a nearby rock wall. "Aghh. What's up with this camel?" Usopp shouted, rubbing his butt where he felt a throbbing pain. "I do give humans a ride but I'll only allow the females and the little lord," he says. Chopper translated what the camel grunted out, confused once again by Luffy being referred to as little lord, but he chalked it to Luffy somehow gaining the respect of both creatures he miraculously befriended. However, Ace, Sabo and Bonnie shared a knowing glance with each other, their eyes conveying the truth which they thought was known only to them. Zoro saw this and realized that Luffy's siblings also knew that Luffy is the incarnation of Nika, the sun god, which is why he was respected and accepted by every creature. Why am I not surprised? Usopp sighed as he got up from the rock wall where he was plastered to. He should have expected that even a perverted camel would allow Luffy to do whatever he wants. Just like Sanji, who treats Luffy much better than him and Zoro. But I really can't walk, Usopp whined pathetically. Mr. Lizard can give you guys a ride, won't you, Mr. Lizard? Luffy asked, seeing Usopp and the rest of his friends already tired due to the whole walking in the desert. The reptile, whom Luffy addressed to, instantly nodded its gigantic head and knelt down at Luffy's requests, which he took it as a command. I'll do whatever the little lord orders me to, he says. Chopper repeated the Sandora lizard's words to the group, who were glad that they didn't have to walk anymore in the scorching heat of the sun. Why are they calling Luffy Little Lord? Sanji questioned, lighting up another cigarette for himself, unknowingly raising the question everyone had in their depths of their mind. I think they respect Luffy, Chopper answered with a shrug. I don't want to know, Usopp babbled, placing his hands on his ears to shield it. The more he thinks about Luffy's mysterious nature, the more questions always pile up, and if, by chance, he manages to get a proper answer, it always ends up with a super secret which THLL for, if somehow they got to know about it. Same here. Nami agreed with Usopp with a shudder as she climbed on top of the camel, who was sitting on the ground for them. Vivi, Bonnie, get on. She beckoned the girls, seeing there was more space for two more. No, I'm fine, yay. Bonnie's excited cheers cut Vivi's refusal, as she climbed just in front of Luffy, who was holding the ropes. It's better you don't question, Cook. Zoro patted Sanji's shoulder with a sigh and climbed up on the lizard. He wouldn't say that he regrets knowing Luffy's secrets, but knowing that Luffy can leave them someday. Zoro really doesn't want the others to be burdened by that too, like he is. Let's get going then, Sabo stated, dismissing the matter of Luffy being called Little Lord, having chalked it to him being a god incarnate. Yes. Ace smiled, picking up their luggage and throwing it to the lizard's back. The journey of the ragtag group of pirates and revolutionaries to Yuba once again began, but with aid now. It was more relaxing now that they don't have to walk and sweat profusely under the heat of the desert. Hey, Bonnie. Nami started a conversation with Bonnie, who was in her original kid form, playing with Luffy's hair excitedly. The sight was too cute, with Luffy pouting childishly and acting like himself once again at Bonnie trying to tame his untamable hair. I'm curious about how you came to know about Luffy, especially since you and he have different fathers, Nami questioned out of curiosity, seeing clear signs of Luffy being unrelated to Bonnie. It's a all LLY long story, Bonnie answered, as she turned towards Nami, abandoning Luffy, who was getting really sleepy. We have time. Nami shrugged, wanting to know about Luffy's past and how they eventually met. Okay. Bonnie spoke with a smile, as she let Luffy hug the camel's neck and she climbed near the camel's hump to talk to Nami. Bonnie wondered where she should start, but then remembered her daddy's story and decided to start from there. When my daddy was really small, he was happily living with his family, but then something bad happened and he had to work under those bad celestial dragons. He lost his parents too, but my daddy didn't give up hope. He had faith in Nika, the sun god, who would save him and help him return to his merry days. Nika? The sun god? Nami uttered in confusion. She couldn't believe that Luffy's fruit carried the name of a god, which she hadn't ever heard of. But isn't that the name of the fruit which Luffy ate? Nami questioned Bonnie, gaining Vivi's attention through it. Both of the girls couldn't believe what they were hearing. How do you know Ni-chan's name? Bonnie asked Nami instead, practically announcing to Nami and Vivi that Luffy's either real name is Nika or he was nicknamed as Nika based on his fruit. Can you tell more about Nika, the sun god? Vivi requested on behalf of herself and Nami to Bonnie, wanting to know about the god about whom Bonnie had been speaking about even before stepping foot on Aramalu. Nika is the warrior of liberation, who saves people in trouble and always brings a smile on everyone's faces with his silly actions. Bonnie excitedly blurted out with a giant smile, without even thinking. It was only when the words escaped from her mouth, she remembered being told to not tell about Nika to anyone she doesn't trust completely. It wasn't like she didn't trust Nami and Vivi, but she had only met them a few hours ago. But that isn't what the story is about right now. I'll tell you about it later. If I get the permission to. Bonnie uttered, looking everywhere but Nami and Vivi. Now, back to the story. Nami was confused at the odd answer which she got from Bonnie, but this also made her stack Bonnie's scarce words about Nika to her mind. She would think about it later. Meanwhile, Vivi wondered about the god who saves people in trouble and prayed silently to him to help her rescue her country from the evil clutches of Crocodile. So, when Daddy was still working for the Celestial Dragons, he befriended my mommy and Eva-chan and made a grand escape after eating his fruit. Daddy even saved several people there, Bonnie told animatedly, with her hands showcasing the big escape her daddy and mommy and Eva-chan made together. Then, Dragon-san made his army, and when Daddy and Mommy were in trouble, he and Eva-chan came to help them. Bonnie's smile dimmed a little as she continued the story. Mommy was a great revolutionary like Daddy, but she disappeared after some time, until I was born and returned to Daddy. Nami hugged Bonnie as the younger's eyes were a bit glossy, which had let Nami comprehend what had happened to her mother. I grew up in a church filled with old folks who really love me. Bonnie uttered, letting a smile form on her former sad face. She misses her mommy and would have loved to see her, but she knew that Mommy was watching her from the stars and would be upset if she was too. The old folks tell me stories of how Daddy had to learn to take care of little me. Bonnie giggled at that, reminiscing the time where she was told that her daddy wasn't even able to hold her properly. I didn't get to have Daddy mostly though, because he was fighting like Nika to save other people in need, but then when I hit 3 years old and started growing pretty stones on my skin, I wasn't allowed to go out in the sun or moon, and Daddy started staying with me more often. Bartholomew Kuma never resented his life. Even when he was enslaved by the Celestial Dragons and had to work for them, he had faith in Nika, about whom his father had told him. He hadn't even given up hope when Ginny disappeared, or rather was kidnapped by a celestial dragon to be his bride. Even though his world seemed to have shattered to bits, Kuma trusted Nika to help her, to keep Ginny safe in the torment which she was forced to endure once again. It wasn't like he wasn't willing to take the matter in his own hands, but he knew that going against the celestial dragons meant declaring war against the world government, which the Revolutionary Army wasn't ready to. Kuma's agony of despair and the crushing weight of Ginny having to endure everything lasted for 2 whole years. He had tried everything to help her, busying himself with the missions and fighting to free nations, training the new recruits and even Dragon's sons, but the oppressing sadness always lingered. That is until one day when he finally met her. He had never been more grateful to hear Dragon's youngest kid's words more than that time. Unknown to him, he would be grateful to him in the future too. Bear Uncle should go visit his home, Luffy had stated with a pout to him. Kuma was really confused when he heard those words. The church, his home, it was nothing without Ginny. Whenever he would go there, he would end up crying, wailing for his loss and the torment which Ginny would be facing as he rests. Kuma was about to refuse the puppy eyes which Luffy was giving to him, but he didn't have the heart to say no. On top of that, even Eva-chan and Dragon-san told him to just have a little break there. He had listened to them and gone, only to be met with Ginny there, sick and weak, dialing the number and talking weakly to them. It was none other than Dragon-san and Eva-chan. He heard her asking for him, making streams of tears and snot flow from Kuma's eyes and nose. The sight of Ginny weak and trembling, her face and entire body covered with blue stones. Kumachi, I didn't want you to see me like this. The painful smile which stretched across Ginny's face had Kuma carrying her gently against his body. Please, don't leave me, Kuma begged Ginny, his whole body racking with sobs. Kumachi, I just want you to know. I love you. Always have, always will. Those were the last words Kuma heard from Ginny, before her eyes became lifeless and her body fell limp. He wasn't even able to tell her how much he loves her too. How? What happened? Kuma wailed. It happened when she was exposed to natural light. Her face. Her enchel blew in the sun. And her skin hardened like stone. One of the old folks, who always visited them, wailed, with tears leaking from her eyes. She burned her remaining time, exposing herself to the sun, so she could cross the ocean and make it home to us because she wanted to ensure her baby's safety. Another bawled, which made Kuma finally look at the small baby who was wailing on the ground. You can rest now, Ginny, I swear I'll raise her well. Kuma vowed, wiping his tears away. The loss of Ginny would always hurt him, but for the sake of the little baby, Kuma was ready to do anything to protect her. Time passed soon, with Kuma learning to take care of his daughter with the help of the old folks in the Sorbert Kingdom, and him going on missions for the Revolutionary Army as well. He managed it all well, until history started repeating itself over. There was a blue stone just below Bonnie's right eye. It had made Kuma panic and shut down all the windows of the church, not allowing any natural light to enter the room where Bonnie was. He hadn't thought that Bonnie would even contract the same disease as her mom, and it was sending him to an edge. The old folks helped Kuma in searching for doctors for Bonnie, but none of them were helpful. Some even had the audacity to tell him to bring Bonnie to the sunlight when he provided what he knew about the disease, while the others weren't familiar with the condition at all. Seeing all doors in the Sorbert Kingdom as well as the South Blue closed, and Bonnie's condition not improving, Kuma decided to quit the army, having decided to dedicate his time to Bonnie and finding anything that would help him cure Bonnie's disease. Even the doctors which Dragon helped him reach were unable to identify the disease which Bonnie was suffering from. Kuma traveled aimlessly in search of doctors. He went to Karakuri Island, Torino Kingdom, Weatheria, and any and all places which had the best doctors or were more advanced than the normal kingdoms. It continued until Bonnie turned 5 and Kuma finally found a doctor who recognized the disease Bonnie had. After examining your daughter, I've concluded that she suffers from sapphire scale. I am afraid it's incurable. The doctor had stated, smashing Kuma's heart into pieces. These days you almost ever see it. Those stones grow exponentially when bathed in any form of natural light, like the sun or the moon. Kuma's mind was struck to the cherry voice of Bonnie wishing to go out in the sun, to a trip with him, to the legendary Sky Islands, where she can see the sun, and Nika, to the Fishman Island. It all seemed to be shattering. Even if you completely prevent any exposure, I'm afraid it's only a matter of time before the disease catches up. The doctor had uttered, hammering Kuma's already shattered heart. Forgive me for being so blunt, but your daughter has another 5 years at best. It'll be a miracle if she reaches her 10th birthday. It'll be over by her 10th birthday. Kuma's voice trembled as streams of tears leaked from his eyes and snot dripped from his nose. His promises to Bonnie about taking her to a journey, it was all shattering. I heard it all. Kuma staggered at the sweet happy voice of Bonnie, who appeared out of nowhere, but that didn't scare him as much as the fact that she now knew. You said it'll be over by my 10th birthday, right? Your 10th? I have no idea what you are talking about. Kuma refused to speak about the cruel reality which he was faced with. He wanted to lie, but at the same time giving false hope to his daughter didn't sit well with him. I heard you say it, Bonnie excitedly stated, climbing on top of him. Ah, yes, he said, when you're 10, Kuma sniffled, wiping the snot from his face. It was about your illness, Bonnie. That stupid doctor, he told me that your condition is going to continue as it is till you are 10. Kuma uttered the truth, but that was the big mistake which he made. That means I'll be all better when I'm 10, right? So he can go on those trips, isn't that right, Daddy? Kuma's heart cried out at the hope and smile which was on Bonnie's face. He could only try to stop himself from crying at the desires which Bonnie presented to him. Oh, Nika, what have I done? After that, Kuma couldn't sit still. He read all the books and visited all the islands which he could, to find a cure for the disease, but he was only getting more and more distressed by not getting a single clue of the disease. That is until he stumbled on the familiar door of the base which always welcomed him. Dragon-san. Eva-chan. I have tried it all, but I couldn't find anything. Kuma cried to 2 people he respects and sees as his family the most after Ginny and Bonnie. He told them his problems, cried his heart out to them. He didn't want to lose Bonnie. Unknown to Kuma, someone else heard his cries and pleas, too, other than Dragon, who had a thoughtful expression on his face, and Ivankov, who was wondering about something.